Okay, Saturday night here at the Voice of College Football. What do you say? What do you say? Why not? Why not? Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Tukey G, I blame you. Tukey G, you better be watching. So Tukey G, at the conclusion of yesterday's show, must have been with our nice, respectable 4 p.m. show that we do every Monday through Friday. Tukey G's like, Mark, late night. You got to go late night, 11 p.m. tonight. Well, Tukey G, I didn't do it on Friday night. I didn't do it last night, but, you know, I was out tonight, had a nice little time with friends, and I got home and thought, what the heck? Let's talk some college football with the fine folks out there. So appreciate you being here. And let's go with the flow. I've got nothing to talk about. Let's bring up the over-unders. Let's do the win totals. Let's do the win totals unless you've got something better to say. I will leave the call-in line here because, of course, this is for you. And, yeah, Tukey G was the latest. But I will say, yeah, Mark After Dark, Troy V. So it was Tukey G who, again, made the call on Friday to say, Mark, a 1 and 11 p.m. show. Want a call-in show at 11 Eastern. Okay, Tukey G, here you go. I'm a day late, but here I am. The other thing is, I hear this all the time from people, and I get it. They're like, Mark, you used to do late night shows all the time, all over the place. You were always doing late night shows. People were showing up for late night shows. You don't do late night shows anymore. You know what? I'm old. I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Well, actually, I don't. I still stay up late. I will forever stay up late, but we got away from late night shows. But I mentioned the other day, I said, you know what? Maybe once a week, maybe we'll pick a night, or maybe we won't pick a night. Maybe we'll just randomly pop on here. Midnight, 2 in the morning, 10 at night, whenever. See if you folks want to talk college football or talk whatever. Comments and questions are welcome, of course. And give me a call. Call-in lines there in the chat. Okay, if nobody's going to call me, I'm just going to talk. And remind everyone, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. You have all missed me at this time. You have missed me Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, we've got a nice little recruiting and update on the transfer portal that we provide for you every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We've got a recruiting channel. At the Voice of College Football. We've had people for years say, Mark, just do a recruiting channel. You know what? We got a recruiting channel. Please find it. I will leave the link in the chat here at some point. We got 30 people watching already. That's nice. Let's keep it moving up. Get some other people on here. Tell your friends, tell your family. Mark's here. He's talking college football. I posted a video this week and nobody watched it. I ain't having my feelings hurt. What am I sitting on? A shirt from yesterday or something. So these are the kind of shows and these are the kind of videos, I should say, and I'm going to get to this call right away because this is the guy that I've not talked to in forever. And so popping on late, and here we go. We got somebody that we used to talk to quite a bit. I went crazy on converting TV ratings into percentages and then into financial figures based on the new ACC settlement. And then I took all these numbers and I plugged them into the formula, the 60-40 formula, and I came up with what's probably pretty accurate in regards to the distribution. And it's pretty crazy. And again, I'm going to get to this call in just a second. But if you check this out, if you're just looking at network television games, forget the ACC network. They don't even do ratings on the ACC network. So I'm sure that they have numbers on the ACC network games, but they don't publicly release those. If you just look at the network games, and for Georgia Tech, that was 3, 6, 7 of their 12 games in the regular season were network games, bolstered by their matchup against Florida State. 5 million people watched that. And also the Georgia game, 8.5 million. And I shouldn't even say people watched that, because that's the average number of people that watched it at any given time. Georgia Tech actually had the best television rating per game. But if you look across the board, Clemson gets the best ratings over the last couple of years. Florida State did in 2023. Clemson's been the most consistent. Speaking of which, since I did drop the name Clemson, oh, he just went away. Just vanished on me. I was just going to go to our buddy Dre, PGVO Football Funk, but he disappeared. I don't know if he tried to disappear. I don't know if he just kind of left us. In the chat, Troy B, good to see you. Jackson, as always. Now we've got the call coming back in, and we will take it from our buddy DeAndre. DeAndre, how you doing?
What's up, Mark? My phone went dead on me.
Oh,
I was trying to talk to you.
That happens. What's
How
going
you been,
on tonight?
brother? How you been? How the family doing?
I'm doing well. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's doing well. How's everyone in your part of the world?
Yeah, everybody's good down here in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good.
Well, Mark, I saw you talking about the ACC deal. I haven't really researched it, but how can I say it? I'm kind of disappointed that it might be breaking up, but that's the way of the new world. And really, for basketball purposes more than football purposes, football is king, and that's what it comes down to. I saw something interesting. I wanted to get your take on it. The ACC is not ACC, but college football. They said the numbers are going down of people playing football. Have you heard that too?
I have.
Oh, so what's your take on it? I mean, what can
you're talking about youth football.
Youth football, yes.
Yes. So I think most of that started. First of all, let's understand that a lot of people are playing soccer. Even when I was in high school, I remember, I thought soccer was basically a third world sport. I didn't play soccer, didn't look at soccer, didn't care about soccer, never thought about soccer. And I think we had just started maybe a soccer program in my high school, and a lot of kids were getting into soccer. Now, fast forward a few years, just a few years, and I think a lot of people were getting their kids into soccer because of the health factor. And then I think what really caused that to take off in regards to parents making other choices for their children was the head injury reports that started to come out in the last 5 to 10 years. And then also consider on top of that, you see a lot of kids that are now playing high school football. They played flag football. They didn't play peewee football, standard youth football, tackle football when they were younger, but they eventually did, but they played a lot of flag football. I'm hearing a lot of flag football leagues are out there now.
Yes. As you know, my son is 9 years old. He played football, and I'm going to tell you a disturbing story. It's not about head injuries, but I think also the lack of developmental kids. The coaches are worried about winning more on the high school level, on the little league level, compared to the development. I had gotten into it with the coach. He the policy states that you're supposed to let your kids play once a quarter. And he wasn't doing that because he said my son wasn't aggressive enough. But this was my son first year playing tackle. And, a lot of parents were kind of disheartened with the coach because he was throwing the ball a lot. And it's harder to pass block than it is to run block. So my son was like, hey, you got to slide your feet and get in front of the guy. And it kind of came disheartening to both of us because I come from a football family. And it was I was disappointed in the development of the coach. And a lot of times, some of the parents are like, "Well, if he ain't playing, if he ain't blocking, he doesn't need to be out there." But I said, "But it's development too. It's not just about coaching." I know I listen, look in your eyes, but I think that has a lot to do with it because sometimes if the policy states that the people are supposed to play once every quarter, they still don't. They don't put a lot of the kids out there. That's what I saw this year with my son playing tackle for the first time.
Yeah, and also depending on how many parents are willing to volunteer and how many qualified people are available, there might be coaches that are pressed into duty or parents pressed into duty that really don't know what they're doing.
Right. So, but yeah, I just thought about that. And then like I said, back to the ACC for a second here. Yeah, I'm just more disappointed far as the football content, basketball content that it's probably going to be gone in the next 10 years. But we all see it coming. The Big Ten Big Ten and SEC really shocked me. I guess if your teams are not doing good, they're going to kick them out. Is that correct? The next deal? Did you hear that?
If your teams aren't doing well, they're going to get kicked out. Who said that?
I had saw a report. It probably flashed across Facebook that SEC and the Big Ten and the Nets negotiating to make teams bring up their facilities that it might put them out.
Okay. Well, those are two different things. I thought you talked about meant that if somebody wasn't winning, that they were going to get kicked out because somebody is not going to win. There are going to be teams with losing records. This obviously that's simple math. Somebody has to lose the games. But you're talking about if programs do not reinvest all that money that they're getting from the media rights back into their facilities.
Yeah, I believe so. I guess that's what they meant.
Okay,
I think Northwestern and Vanderbilt was two of the teams they were looking at.
Okay. Well, that's reasonable to think. Okay, we just cut a when it comes to the Big Ten, it was pushing $1 billion for what was it? No, it was like $7.8 billion, I think, for 7 years. Yeah, if you're making that kind of money and every school's making $90 or $100 million just on the media rights deal, invest some of that money back into the program. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Yeah, I know we last time we spoke had asked you about the influence of UNC basketball. I know you used to be a basketball head. Dean Smith, or how important was Dean Smith now that Bobby Hurley had won 2 championships at Connecticut? Does it devalue what Dean Smith because he had trouble winning national championships over his time period? But one of my friends did point out, he said DeAndre was a lot easier. It's a lot easier to win, harder to win back then because you only had 8 teams, and usually those were the best 8 teams.
8?
Yeah, back in like the 70s. It didn't expand to what
Dean Smith's 2 national championships were in
1991.
One was in 82.
91 was the other one, I believe.
Yes. 91? Yeah, they beat Kansas.
Nah, they beat Michigan. Chris Webber. They beat them.
Obviously the Chris Webber play. Yeah, 90, 93, whatever. Yeah, Duke beat them in 92, and then 1993. Yeah, the Chris Webber play. Yeah, North Carolina. That was Dean Smith's second title. He won in 82 with James Worthy and those guys, Sam Perkins over Indiana, and then no, they lost to Indiana actually the year before. They beat Georgetown anyway in 82. 82, 93. What's he talking about? 8 teams. 8 teams in the ACC?
Well, I believe in the 70s, there was only 8 or 16 teams. And
in the tournament?
Yeah. I think the tournament in the spring to 32, right?
No. Not that deep into history. No, you got to go way back before that.
Okay.
No, there were 60. They went to 60. I don't remember the exact year. 85 was, I think, the final jump to 64.
That Villanova.
Before that, it was, the Villanova upset of Georgetown when they shot like 68% from the field. 79, I think, is the Bird Magic years when it went to 48. And before that, it was 32. 32 for a long time. But they were playing with 32 like in the 70s. And Dean Smith's title, his first title was in 82. And it was at least a 48 team field.
Right. Okay. All right. Well,
I thought you meant 8 teams in the ACC. There was only 8 teams in the ACC at one point.
Till 91 when Florida State joined.
Yeah, so that made it 9?
Right.
And then they packed in with all the Big East teams in 04.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and I think I asked you this. I know this is a football show, but I have to ask you. I know because I know you're a big basketball head. UNLV 1990. I know they lost 7 games, but the next year, was that the best college basketball team that you ever seen? I think them are Kentucky in 96 were the 2 best college basketball teams I ever seen.
I would say that the starting 3 to 4 out of that starting 5 for UNLV was Stacey Augmon, Anderson Hunt, Larry Johnson, of course, that those guys were better than Kentucky's best players, but Kentucky had waves of pros.
Right. Okay.
I think they were deeper. But yeah, I wouldn't put up anyone against that Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon, that starting 5. Anderson Hunt, who am I forgetting? It's been a long time.
Riedel Anthony. Was it Riedel Anthony?
No,
I know
he played wide
Gilmore was the
receiver for
center.
Florida.
Gilmore was the
Greg
center.
Anthony.
Greg Anthony. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I know a lot of people didn't tune in here to hear us talk about football, but I mean basketball. But I had to ask. I know at one point in time you was really a big basketball star, and it's tournament time, and I you got to ask some of these questions. There's very limited what we can talk about in college football this year. I do have a football question for you. Shedeur Sanders, what do you think his outlook is going to be in the pros? Because I don't think too many people are high on him.
Well, I'm high on him to the extent that I think he was an extremely accurate passer this year, that's for sure. And obviously we know he can play without an offensive line. The offensive line this year was so much better than last year, but it still wasn't very good. But the one that he played with in 23 was awful. And he led the country in completion percentage. And that's not with dinks and dunks over the line of scrimmage. He throws the ball downfield. I might be wrong in the size and weight, but he doesn't seem as thick and durable as Cam Ward. He's a little slender. And again, I don't, for as much as I love the NFL draft itself, I don't follow the lead up to the draft. I love to watch the draft. I don't follow the projection on who's supposed to be where. Somebody made a comment the other day to us that one of ESPN's top guys was predicting a 1, 2, 3 Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart as the top 3 picks in the draft.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Mark. I look at what was the quarterback? Wentz, and I look at Matthew Stafford, and I want to make sure I'm phrasing this right. Not Matthew Stafford. What's the guy at Detroit now? He used to play for the Rams.
Jared
Goff. So when they got paid, their teams kind of went down, like when the Rams and with Philly. So their teams had to get rid of it. I don't really think Hurts is a great quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. Are quarterbacks overvalued in today's time? Because if you get a good offensive line, a good running game and good receivers around him, just like the kid at the 49ers, could they be overvalued a little bit?
I think that's a good point because they've become basketball point guards.
Mhm.
They're more distributors, and shoot, anybody that you draft into the NFL should be able to throw a 6 to 8 yard pass consistently. Uh, and the scheme gets these guys open more so than back in the day when we started watching, and Terry Bradshaw's taking shots, throwing outs at 22 yards constantly,
Mhm.
and really having to thread the needle. No, it's a good point. It's an interesting point. Yeah, I have always thought that the quarterback position was overvalued. We all know it's the most important position on the field. That's obvious. That can't be debated. But I think it's overvalued from the standpoint of how much it's the most important position. Give me five. Give me the best offensive line in the NFL with what you think is an average quarterback over a great quarterback and the worst offensive line in the league.
Right. No, I heard Lawrence Taylor say in an interview on YouTube or somewhere, he said he thought Joe Montana was still the best quarterback that he ever seen because he said that you couldn't hear uh, what's my man Tom Brady. How do you take his take on that?
What did he say about Tom Brady?
He said because you couldn't hit Tom Brady
Oh, because you
like
can't
you
hit
could back in the day, you could hit Joe Montana. So he said he thought Joe Montana was still better than Tom Brady because of that factor.
Well, there's no question that those quarterbacks took much more of a beating. Uh, Even when they cleaned up the rules in 1978 to protect the quarterback and to give the wide receivers more freedom downfield, you could still haul off on a quarterback as long as you had a free step and a half after he released the ball. And you could land on him, you could do all sorts of things. Yeah. What was done to Joe Montana in the NFC Championship game in 1990,
Mm.
we don't see hits like that on a regular basis now.
Right. Okay. Um, I had another question about quarterbacks for you. I forgot what it was, but yeah, but I just thought Lawrence Taylor was interesting when he said that. But I'm not a big fan of quarterbacks. I think they're overrated. Because when I say that, if you go back and look at Tom Brady's first three Super Bowls, I think the defense was the main catalyst for them
True.
winning,
Sure.
and you know Troy Aikman played with one of the best offensive lines ever in the all-time running back. I don't think he's ever led the league in passing yards
No,
or passing touchdowns.
nowhere close.
So I mean, I that's why I say sometimes we look at some people um, and say, "Hey, they this great," and I say, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not gonna say Brett Favre is the best quarterback I ever seen. 'Cause I really don't think so. But look how much hype that he gets, him and Dan Marino, and I think Dan Marino was great, and neither one of Brett Favre won what one Super Bowl, and Dan didn't win any, and John Elway struggled to win two. Was when he started leaning on the running game. That's when he won his Super Bowls, and he was much older quarterback at that time. So
Brad Johnson has a Super Bowl championship. Elvis Gerbach has a Super Bowl championship.
right. So yeah, and
Jeff Hostetler has a Super Bowl championship.
yeah. So um, oh, the quarterback from Ohio State. I can't remember. This Miller, right? The quarterback this past year,
Will Howard.
Will Howard. I think that's a overlooked guy. I think he was 6'4", played in the cold in Kansas State and played at Ohio State in the cold. Seems like he got a strong arm. He's not somebody that you hear the NFL giving a lot of looks. I think he'll be perfect for my Pittsburgh Steelers.
You might be right. He took all sorts of grief for his combine performance,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's overrated. These guys throwing in their underwear against nothing but air to receivers that they'd never thrown to. Will Howard was pretty remarkable this season. I know that he had like 3 bad mistakes the whole season, and those got underlined and emphasized to the nth degree, but he was pretty sharp this year.
Is it McCoy, the guy at Syracuse? How do you think? Yeah. How do you think his outlook looks for him passing for the pros?
Kyle McCord, who broke your buddy Deshaun Watson's ACC passing record this year.
Right.
Kyle McCord's more of a gunslinger.
Right.
Now, he was somewhat forced to do that this year at Syracuse because Syracuse kind of won football games in a similar way to Wake Forest in the way they were winning when Sam Hartman and those receivers were there. That I don't know that I've ever seen a team win as many games as they did based on just having a quarterback and 3 receivers and like a very average team other than that. And that's kind of how Syracuse won this year. It was Kyle McCord throwing 50 times. He's a very talented quarterback. I think he took a bad rap at Ohio State for not necessarily being a leader, not missing the throw, but not seeing the throw that should have been made, and all those things. But people have to realize that when Kyle McCord stepped onto the field at Ohio State, he had never started a game in his life. When Will Howard stepped on the field at Ohio State for his first game, he had 2.5 years of starting experience at Kansas State. So I think Kyle McCord, he can make every throw. He's an extremely talented thrower of the football. And the Syracuse people all said that he was a leader. He was tough. He showed up first. He did all the right things, all the things you want out of a quarterback.
Okay. Quentin Euros, he was outside of who Vince Young was one of the few one with 1,000% composite quarterbacks coming out of high school.
Yes.
I think those were the 2. So do you think people are overlooking him? I know they say he doesn't have a lot of zip on his ball. I mean, he couldn't have fell off that far from coming out of high school to the pros,
You're reminding me of a text I got from my daughter during the Ohio State-Texas game. And I don't know if somebody told her this or she noticed it, because I thought if she can notice this, she said, this quarterback doesn't throw the ball that hard. Yeah, that's a bit of a knock on him, which seems like an odd knock. I didn't really notice that myself, but I'm not watching these games, scouting these guys as NFL prospects.
Because I'm looking, because I'm still a fan, and I know that still is going to be a market for a quarterback. I know Dart is somebody they've been linked to. I mean, they're looking for all skill positions, because I know they're going to be looking at the running back from Ohio, to 2 running backs from Ohio State, but I know quarterback is one of those positions. And
yeah, I would take Jackson's Dart over Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like this dude just fell from grace. Like I tell you, the kid at Clemson Cublet, I don't see how he has an NFL career at all, because his arm is not strong. And Euros and him went back and forth in Texas. To me, I just don't know what to say.
All right, DeAndre, we appreciate you being here.
All right, Mark, you take
starting to line up here. So,
all right,
thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
All right, we better get this moving. So we appreciate your patience, everyone. So let's go to Anthony. Anthony, what's going on tonight?
Hi, Mark. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for the call. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Your previous caller was this is what makes me upset with the football fans in general. We criticize the quarterback for not winning the Super Bowl or a college a national championship, forgetting the fact that football is a team game in general.
The ultimate team game.
Yeah, so to me, if a quarterback, and people act like it's easy to get to a national championship or a Super Bowl. No, it isn't. And I'm basing my next statement on what his peer said. even Montana said Marino was the greatest quarterback to play in the NFL. Like, when his peers say that, I'm not being a homer as a Dolphins fan. I'm basing it off of people who played against him, and so I'm basing it off his peers and coaches that said he was the hardest quarterback to game plan for when he was playing and stuff like that. So I'm basing, and to me, like, when you look at the Carson, they're saying Carson might be able to start week 1 right away, where it's gonna be like he didn't miss a beat. And what people forget to me with Carson, they're saying he's not a mobile quarterback. This is coming from my fan base. You're basing it off what you saw this year. He was dealing with multiple quad, like, not a quad injury, but he was dealing with like groin like a groin the whole season and stuff like that, and that shoulder injury. So you're basing off his mobility off of what you saw this season, when you need to look at the 2 times he won a national championship the year before that and stuff like that. So to me, I'm basing his mobility off what I saw the 2 years prior to that, instead of this year, which is limited mobility is based off of injuries that he was dealing with throughout the season. So to me, I'm excited for Carson. I'm still in wait and see, but I'm excited for what Carson brings, the experience and the championship level competition that he faced in the SEC. And to me, I like Cam Ward, but he had tendencies last year to make throws that are not, like, make mistakes, and he got away with it because of his that magic, the magic man ability or whatever. I would rather have a quarterback that doesn't make Carson is the type of quarterback I would prefer. I understand he's not mobile, but I would prefer the guy who is methodically not making the mistakes all the time. Like, throwing every time last year, when did you see that with Ward, where he would make throws that even though it was completed, you're not supposed to be making those throws as a quarterback, like throwing across your body or throwing it into double or triple coverage. He got away with it, but that scares me a little bit with Ward at the next level.
Okay, Anthony, can I go now?
Yes, sorry.
No. Don't say you're sorry. I was just waiting there. So you got a lot to unpack here. We start out with number 1. I'm glad that you disclosed, as a proponent that Dan Marino is the greatest quarterback of all time, that you are a Dolphins fan, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
But I'm not basing it off my homerism. I'm basing it off his peers who said this.
Okay. Joe Montana actually did say that, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Montana.
Well, he's certainly qualified to say that.
Yeah.
I will say that Dan Marino is not the greatest quarterback of all time, but he's up there. But
yeah.
I watched him play a lot of football. I don't believe he's the greatest of all time. Let's get to the current guys. And I did not anticipate that this was going to turn into an NFL draft show, but that's okay. All right, Cam Ward. So let's go to your latest quarterback that you brought up.
Yeah.
Yes, Cam Ward takes chances. Now, the one thing that's impressive about Cam Ward's development is that at Washington State and even at Incarnate Word, he was a turnover machine. And that's both carrying the football too loosely in the pocket, not being aware of defenders, hanging on to the football too long where it gets stripped out of his hand, and then also throwing interceptions. He cleaned that up considerably this year.
Yeah.
Now, to your point, I'm looking at the Duke game, for example. Yeah. Miami eventually blew out Duke, but they were down 8 points in the third quarter. And one of the big reasons why, and Duke was about to blow this game open, Cam Ward made a ridiculously stupid throw where he was trapped on the right sideline and threw the ball all the way across the field and got it picked off. He also was bailed out by a few defenders dropping the football. Cam Ward, plays like Superman. He thinks that he's Superman, and those margins of error are going to disintegrate when everybody on the field's an NFL player defensively.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to be, you don't want to take that away from him, but he can't play like that and loose with the football all the time.
This is where I hate the comparison that they have for him. They're saying he's like, he's sort of like Patrick Mahomes, kind of. Do you agree with that? Where Patrick does the same exact thing and he gets away with it because of that innate ability to get away with throws that no normal quarterback would get away with?
Who's saying Patrick Mahomes is lucky to get away with? Nobody gets lucky
no.
an
What I'm
entire
saying
career.
is no. What I'm saying is, in terms of the ability to make throws that no normal quarterback and get away with it and stuff like that,
And get away with it because he has that kind of arm talent. Sure, Brett Favre did it, but it also cost him. Now, Patrick Mahomes is not a turnover machine. He's very, very efficient. So
does it look like like the way he plays? Does it seem like it's like with Patrick Mahomes and Cam Ward? Do you think the way they play seems like they should be throwing more, making more mistakes than they actually do, and stuff like that?
well, with
That
Cam
style
Ward,
of play,
with
like
Cam Ward,
that playground football.
I got you. With Cam Ward, we're going to have to see it at the next level. Patrick Mahomes already has proven that he can be arguably the greatest quarterback of all time.
I'm comparing him coming out of Texas Tech. That the Patrick Mahomes coming out of Tech.
I will say this. If this was 15 years ago to 20 years ago, and we were looking at Cam Ward versus Patrick Mahomes, it would be a more apt comparison because there were far fewer quarterbacks playing like that. There were more just very traditional Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe pocket type passers. There's a lot of guys that play like those guys do now.
Okay. Yeah. And what I was saying before, do you agree with me that people are underestimating Carson Beck's mobility? Like, you saw him play in the SEC a little bit, right? Like,
Yes,
when
sure. I played
before the injuries, the injuries I was talking about, like, he had a groin. People forget it wasn't disclosed, but at the end of the season, during the season, it wasn't disclosed, but he actually said he was dealing with a groin and stuff like that. A groin, like 2 groin strains during the season. That's why he wasn't as mobile and stuff like that.
All right. So in regards to Carson Beck's mobility, his mobility's fine, but that's not an attribute and that's not a plus. But it's not a liability.
Like people are making it out to be, you think?
I don't know if they're making it out to be. I don't listen to pre-draft projections.
Oh no, I'm not talking about the draft. I'm talking about like, I'm coming from the perspective that I'm excited as a Hurricanes fan, but there's people hesitant.
Oh, I got you.
Hesitant from our fan base saying this guy's not as mobile. They're comparing some.
Well, he's not as mobile as Cam Ward. He's not going to be doing pirouettes in the pocket and spinning all over the place and leaving the pocket. And that's probably a good thing for Carson Beck and for most quarterbacks because there's only so many Cam Wards out there. No, he's not going to be playing like Cam Ward.
Do you think that's an unfair comparison?
If there's a lane that opens up in the offensive line and it's 3rd and 5, he can take off and get you 6 yards for a first down.
Yeah, no. And when I look at Carson Beck, I've always said his mobility, I compare it to like an Aaron Rodgers. They had the ability. They're not
Carson Beck and Aaron Rodgers? No.
No. I'm talking about the mobility aspect.
As mobile as Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he's as mobile as Aaron Rodgers at 40 years old.
No. But what I'm saying, I'm talking about they're not run first quarterbacks that they're going to give you 20, 30 yards. They're going to get, if there's an opening, they give you maybe 10, like 5 to 10 yards. That's what I'm saying. They're not a quarterback that's going to give you 15, 16 yards and stuff like that.
They're going to get you 10, but not 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I being unfair?
No, you're not being unfair. That's not an app. That's not the comparison I would make. I would not be making comparisons between Aaron Rodgers and Carson Beck, but that's fine. I get your point. He's not a run first guy, but he's not a statue. He's not George Blanda. He's not Drew Bledsoe.
He's not Marino.
Marino, yes. Those guys could not run. He's not Peyton Manning.
Yeah, no, and like I said, and to me.
All right, Anthony, one more point, and then we got to move on. What do you got for us?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this next. To me, you're not gonna see a lot of RPOs with Carson Beck when he gets on the field.
Not.
You're gonna see more of the play action and more like bootlegs on either side of the field, not the pure RPOs that you saw with Cam Ward. More
the point
bootleg.
I'll make about our Carson Beck, and we could argue this all night, depending on your perspective, and I don't know where the truth is. Most likely the truth is somewhere in between. So if you look at Carson Beck's numbers from 2023 to 2024, his completion percentage plummeted by like 8 or 9%. His interceptions doubled, and his touchdown percentage went down. He had a far worse 2024 than 2023. Well, he lost Brock Bowers. So you either can say, well, he benefited from having the best tight end in college football, or you can say he lost Brock Bowers. And Georgia's wide receiver core this past year was, for Georgia, horrendous. Yes. They led the nation in dropped passes. Arian Smith, for some reason, when balls are thrown at his belt, thinks that he has to jump in the air to catch them. And their offensive line was, as we saw in the Sugar Bowl when Gunnar Stockton was in the game. Well, no, Carson Beck was in the game at the time. No, that was obviously Gunnar Stockton. Yes. Anyway, the offensive line was not up to Georgia's standards. So, yeah, Carson Beck certainly did not play as well 2024 as he did in 2023, but there were a lot of reasons why. And that's usually the deal with a quarterback.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Mark.
Thank you, sir. Night. Appreciate you calling. All right. DeReal MVP showing up for us. What's going on, DeReal?
Hey, nothing much, Mark. Seeing new people. It's always good to see that. How about you? How are you doing?
Yeah, some people found me tonight. That's nice to see. It is nice to get some different callers here, excluding yourself. We always want to hear from you.
Well, that's good. Mark, this is, as a Kentucky fan, this is only the 3 weeks of the season that I actually get to enjoy in any sport that were actually relevant. So that's nice.
Yeah. So what's the outlook for the Cats?
Pretty good, but we play in by far the best conference in the history of college basketball.
That's what I hear. I've actually heard that out of the mouth of. Now, I was not looking for this analysis. It must have been something where I'm like going through reels, and suddenly I get basketball analysis that I'm not looking for. But of course, I totally respect Jay Billis for being the great analyst that he is. And when I did watch basketball, he was my guy. Where he said, "This is the greatest conference in the history of college basketball, or at least going back to the ACC of the early to mid 1980s.
Yeah, it's insane how good the SEC is. I don't know if you're going to fill out a bracket in March, Mark, but you're going to notice a lot of SEC representation.
Yeah, that's crazy. Maybe they get like 3 out of the Final Four or something like that. I've not filled out a bracket probably in 10 years.
That's fun. It's a fun casual thing.
Oh, I know it's fun. I did for like a bunch of years before that.
And this is going to lead to my take that I'm kind of formulating on. But, Mark, the SEC might get 14 teams out of 60 in the tournament.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, if they earned it, then hey.
Well, they have, because they're non-conference. They just won every game, basically, that you can imagine. Even the lower-ranked teams won against the top teams.
Yeah, I understand Clemson's one of the best teams in the ACC, and South Carolina, as of late, had not won an SEC game, and they beat Clemson.
Yeah, they've won 2 SEC games since then. But they're still like, 2-18? So they're horrible, and Clemson's the third best team, or the third seed in the ACC conference at 18-2? I think they finished up. So you had a 2-18 SEC team being an 18-2 ACC, Mark.
Wow.
So this was going to formulate into my take I was going with, and I think the Pac-12 is kind of disappeared forever. It's in the void, and there was this kind of who would take their place in these non-revenue sports? And I think the SEC has established themselves as the dominant conference going forward in every sport that isn't named football. I mean, because if you look at the SEC right now, they're clearly the best conference in men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, women's gymnastics, softball. They're just dominating and cleaning house. So, do you think it's sustainable for it to be this excellent in every other sport, along with being great in football? Because I don't remember the last time you've had a sport or a conference just be universally great across the board, like the SEC is trying to do.
Well, you've had a few conversations with me in your life to real, so you should know that I'm going to opt to go with the probabilities first. Before we do anything, I'm just going to flat out say the probabilities say no, just like I was talking to my daughter today. And I'm going to take us off course, but we were talking percentages as well, because I finally got to I asked her, has Ryan Day done enough to finally get your good graces? And she's like, no, don't like him. I still don't like him. Anyway, I'm going through the percentages, and he's done this and he's done that, and he's got one of the 3 best percentages of all time. But even though he has a better percentage to start a career than Urban Meyer did, Urban Meyer has one of the greatest percentages, actually the greatest percentage in modern college football history. So the odds say that Ryan Day can't keep that up. Just like, how is the SEC going to be able to keep that up? But all the sports that it's ironic, because all the sports that you just mentioned outside of men's basketball, when I was covering SEC sports, the SEC was the best in men's tennis, gymnastics, golf, baseball. Like, I went to a College World Series, covered a College World Series. 4 teams out of 8 from the SEC were there, from the SEC Western Division at the time. The men's and women's tennis teams was always like 7 of the top 10 teams in the country were out of the SEC. So I don't know what's happened since then, because I did not cover those sports after that, but I'm sure little changed. Now, maybe they're just having another upswing, but I doubt it that they lost that much even in the last 20 years.
Right. Well, we've established.
So I'm actually debating myself to say, statistically, this is an aberration. It's got a slump, but they've generally maintained this. Because they have athletes in their part of the country. They want to win in every sport, football the most, but they want to win in every sport, number one. Number two, they've got athletes in their part of the country. So that's a great combination.
Right, it is. It's a deadly and potent combination. It's crazy you mentioned the 4 SEC West teams in baseball, because literally last year the SEC had 4 out of the 8 teams in the College World Series. But yeah. I think the evolution of Oklahoma and Texas, their value isn't even in basketball, is in football, as much as they are just clearly all-time great in some other sports, like Oklahoma softball, for example. So now you look at, like, you think people think SEC bias and football's bad. Go look at the softball rankings. Are like 5 of the top 6 are SEC schools now. It's insane. And yeah. I mean, and something I was going to mention to you, to go back to college football, is Texas's over-under odds seem very low to me. And this is, to me, is a red flag, because anytime I see something that is wildly distorted from what I think is going to happen, usually that means they know something that I don't know. So How come Texas is all the way at 9.5 when their schedule is set up, is the same schedule as last year? They just swapped road and home. I feel like, just looking at their schedule, they've just got 10 wins right off the bat.
Well, they're playing Ohio State this year and not Michigan. That would be one thing. But I do agree with you that that's usually a bit of a red flag when it looks like, wow, I need to jump all over that. And that does appear to be a game low, which is significant, especially at that juncture of the tier system near the top there. But Yeah, we don't have the schedule in front of us, but yeah, they played one of the weakest SEC schedules, so it's projected. And I did a follow-up video because I did a preseason video that pointed out the weak Texas schedule. Then I did a postseason video which verified that it in fact did, as projected, as I projected, did turn out to be a weak schedule. And they're going to play it again next year. So unless things drastically change, they'll play another week SEC schedule, but they've got to go to Ohio State as opposed to going to Michigan, which they won by 3 touchdowns. So that's more of probably a 60-40 loss category game for them, you would have to think. But other than that,
they play Georgia, and outside of that, they don't play anybody that's decent. I guess Texas A&M's decent, but everyone else is just kind of okay.
Well, they're playing Florida. They got Florida on the
they're
road.
Okay.
They got Florida on the road now. They've got Texas A&M at home, and they go to Georgia. So between Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, and Ohio State, that's 4. And they should be heavily favored against Texas A&M, or a solid favorite against Texas A&M. Anybody else you see on that schedule? I'm trying to think.
That's it.
Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Kentucky, your boys, they come to mind. Yeah, there's no LSU, there's no Ole Miss on their schedule. Yeah, it does seem low. I know that I don't know if this speaks to the win-loss projection, but ESPN and that FPI, they're very heavy on quarterbacks coming back. They weight that, or at least they used to. But Arch Manning should be as good as Quinn Ewers, maybe better.
Right, which is one of the reasons I'm surprised the number is low as it is, because I view that as true for the betting public, or just the public in general as well, is if they've got a quarterback coming back and a head coach coming back with an easier schedule, I feel like their win total would be artificially inflated, not deflated.
Well, I see Leanne in our chat tonight, and I know she majors on over-under, so she may want to look out for that one. 10-2, they got to get to 10. Yeah, see, I'm still not that overly confident about getting to 10 wins with a trip to Athens and a trip to Columbus. Not that they're automatically going to lose those games, but they're going to be the underdog in both of those games, and then they only need to lose one other, and you have lost that season's bet.
I understand that, but to me, those games aren't like right. They've got no game where you can write them off as like 95-5 games. I mean, these games are 60-40 games, and then they've got how many 80% win games on their schedule?
Yeah. They will most likely, if somebody held a gun to my head and I had to get it right to save my life, I'd say that they are going to split the Georgia and Ohio State games, because that's the probability that they do win one of those games. And then they would have to lose 2 other games. I hear you. I just don't think it's as egregious as you do.
Well, that's fair. I mean, listen, you got to find your edge where you can get them in these, because these things are usually pretty accurate.
Oh, yes. But there's a few out there. I wish I would have kept my record. I would have to go back into videos and really look at it, because this is something I had not done my entire career. And then Steve Dace got me into it because he was so good at it that I took a shot at it for like 3 years. And I was hitting like 65%, which is certainly good enough to make some money. But I kind of backed off the last couple of years and didn't take a shot. But we'll have to do that this summer.
How's our favorite team, Iowa, that's in this category? They just always feel like every year, they're 7.5. Look at their schedule. They'll probably win 8 or 9 games easily, 14-13 type style.
Listen to this, DeReal. Iowa. So I started a scheduling series where I basically looked at, okay, what's the difference in your schedule from 2024 now to 2025? Iowa's gets significantly tougher. The teams that they just traded out that were substantially under 500 in the Big Ten, like not horrendous, but they were 4 or 5 games under 500. Those teams are being replaced by teams that went 33-12 in the Big Ten. They got Oregon coming up. They've got Penn State now. And there must be somebody else in there that's fairly significant that they picked up. Michigan. They got Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon this year.
Well, I'm happy they're finally getting to feel like what the Big Ten's like, Mark. I mean, they've been
Yeah,
insulated by the Big Ten West for
I know
10,
they've been
15
dodging
years.
the real Big Ten for a long, long time. But then they get hit with Ohio State twice in the last 3 years, and they lost 56-10 and 35-7. So they've had a couple wake up calls. Their last, I gotta compile this stat. It won't be difficult to do. Their last 5 to 6 games against ranked teams is horrendous because they had those 2 drubbings against Ohio State. They got skull dragged by Michigan 3 times in the last 5 years. Tennessee annihilated them 35-0. Penn State beat them 31-0. Their point differential against ranked teams, especially top 10 teams in the last 4 to 5 years is it's embarrassing. I'm going to bring that up on our Iowa show and get some people riled up.
Yeah, to turn a phrase from Jim Harbaugh, that sounds biblical, Mark. The final thing I'll ask you about is, do you think if you kind of don't know about college football and you're just a casual, do you think the best place to go going forward for this type of stuff is the Big 12? Because I don't know how anybody has really any idea of what that conference is capable of.
You lost me. Is what the best thing to go to the Big Ten for?
The over-unders, the win totals.
Would it be the best? But they're the most unpredictable teams. That's an interesting point. I don't know what to tell you there. Let's see who's on here. We've got, this tells you the state of the Big 12 right here. We got to go 40 spots just to find a team. There we go.
Well, hold on, scroll up. You missed one.
I'm sorry.
Arizona's.
Oh, Arizona State was up there?
Yeah,
Where?
Scroll down. They're below Michigan, Mark. I know that block M, you just block it out of your brain. So, you got.
So we got Texas Tech and Arizona State at 8.5. Arizona State, in terms of a non-conference game, goes to Mississippi State. They should win that game. They should. Texas Tech, I don't know who their big non-conference game is this year off the top of my head. I would not take either one of those to go over. No, thank you.
Would you take a single Big 12 team going forward at this number, barring some unbelievable soft schedule that people see?
Yes, that you're bringing up a good point. This is where you collect over-unders and you take Texas Tech, Kansas State, and Arizona State, and you bet under on all 3, and you're going to hit 2. You know what I mean?
Would you do? Yes, and would you do the opposite for the teams at the bottom of the list and bet the overs for the bottom 2 or 3?
Yeah, we got to do that and keep track of it and see if it happens. It reminds me of about 3 years ago when I saw Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State at 10.5. Those teams never go 10-2, almost never go 10-2. I thought you take all 3, 2 of them are going to go 11-1 at least, and they did. There you go. You win 2 out of 3. That's all you need to do.
Right. I know for last year, this probably would have worked because Utah and Oklahoma State, I believe, were.
Yes.
I believe they easily would have hit their unders last year. Would you agree with that?
Well, yes, they did. Oklahoma State went from 9-3 regular season to 3-9, and Utah went from 8-4 to 5-7, and they were the favorites in the conference.
Right.
Yeah,
now,
let's go
that
to
number there. Sorry,
we'll go to the bottom. Keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say Wisconsin at 5.5 is surprising because Luke Fickell in his 3rd year only being projected as a marginal bowl team. That hot seat, man, if that happens, would be scorching.
Now, see, this makes sense that as we go down the board, There are no Big 12 teams, at least in the bottom 6, 7. Minnesota Duluth. What the heck's going on there? Anyway, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The bottom 12. You got to go to West Virginia to get to 5.5. So you take the over. They still have to go 6 and 6. I don't know what their schedule looks like. Yeah, so maybe that's not quite as easy as we anticipated. Houston's going to go 6 and 6. Really? I'm taking the under on that. Automatically, just taking the under. Although Willie Fritz is a good coach.
Yeah, but Houston's just a dumpster fire, Mark. I mean, Houston's just completely lifeless. Oklahoma State, I mean, that's one I think that's interesting that they were at the top last year. Now the year before, they're at the complete bottom. That's interesting. Overreaction, possibly?
Yes, if Mike Gundy is still Mike Gundy, he's never had a season like he had last year. They bounce back. They at least get to 6 and 6. Let's look at Houston's schedule. And then other callers, we will get to you. Let's look at the Houston Cougars schedule.
I saw West Virginia. The only team non-conference they play is Pitt. So
yeah,
that's just another Big 12 level team they're playing.
Pitt's been embarrassing the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, West Virginia's not exactly gold, Mark.
Yeah, Pitt losing their last 6 consecutive. After I certainly went crazy when they were 7-0, just basically saying this is one of the most severe cases of smoke and mirrors I've ever seen. All right.
Yeah, and they got blown out in most of those games as well. It wasn't even close, and they were playing marginal teams. And they lost to Toledo in their bowl game.
They did, although they played with like a 4th-string quarterback. So this is the Houston schedule. So they've got 3 non-conference games against Stephen F. Austin, Rice, and Oregon State. They could get 3 wins easily there, but they'd still have to go 3 and 6 in the Big 12. And they could go to Oregon State and lose, in which they would have to go 4 and 5 in the Big 12. And, trying to dissect a Big 12 schedule, unless you see Kansas State on the schedule or Iowa State, somebody we are relatively sure is going to be good, the rest of them, who knows?
Right, just a hodgepodge of teams that are just they're all 7 and 5, 6 and 6 teams, but one of them's got to go 9 and 3 or 10 and 2, and one of them's got to go 4 or 8 and 3 and 9.
The Big 12 could end the season, take a week off, start another season with the same players and the same schedule, and it could be completely different.
Yeah, it's easily the most fun conference to watch in college football because you never know what's going to happen with that. But, sure. I mean, for Houston being as bad as they were in that conference startles me a bit because they weren't even really competitive, if I recall, in most of their games. Like, they were pulling off upsets or, quote-unquote upsets.
We're going deep on some Houston analysis here. I didn't know Houston's performance in the red zone. I know they've got Donovan Smith at quarterback. That's about as far as I can go on the Houston Cougars. And, of course, Willie Fritz there. So, very nice.
Well, Mark, this call didn't go, this call went to a beautiful place and beautiful direction I wasn't expecting to go, but we made all our Houston Cougars fans happy out there.
I know.
Those are all 5.
This like quadrupled or more our Houston Cougar coverage for like an entire year.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's off-season talk. You got to find something to talk about, and Houston Cougar football is probably the most off-season thing we can get to tonight, but I'll see you next time, Mark. Good talking to you.
Thanks to Real. All right. Ben, you're a member of the network. We got to put you to the back of the line. You got your own show, but we'll get to you, Ben. Hang on. Let's hit Lewis. Lewis, what's going on tonight?
How's it going, Mark?
I'm doing well. Thanks for your patience.
You good? You good? First time calling your show. I believe back in 22 you used to have a someone that did this for Notre Dame, and that was probably one of the first times that I started calling. But
Okay.
I know that you're a diehard Ohio State fan. Am I correct or am I wrong?
I'm just a college football fan, Lewis. I don't care about any particular teams.
Well, I want to tell you congratulations on the Natty.
Oh, well, thank you.
I
Sure.
wasn't trying to be I ain't trying to be a sore loser. You know what I
Of
mean?
course, you're saying congratulations because not because I'm an Ohio State fan, but because I actually did predict them before the season to win the national championship. So I just got that right.
You and half of America did. You know what I mean? I had my Notre Dame making it to
All right.
I had my Notre Dame making it to the Final Four.
So let me throw this one at you, Lewis. I predicted every single college football playoff correctly, 11-0, including Notre Dame to win all their games until the championship game.
Oh, I didn't see that, but hey, thank you very much. Thank you for the recognition. But
yeah, and congratulations to your Irish for putting in a great season, defeating some good teams en route. Georgia, Penn State, and then fighting hard when half of America thought, okay, this is going to be 42-7. And hey, you had a one possession game, needed to stop. They at least got themselves back in it.
Well, what I gotta say is we got a head coach that understands the university and understands Notre Dame. It's been a long time for us Notre Dame fans. We went through the Bob Davie, Tyrone Willingham, bootleg resume guy. We went with Charlie Weiss, and then we had old fart Brian Kelly being a politician over there and did not do what he was supposed to be doing, and he exited out. But the most thing that I call forward to is I love college football. I'm a college football guy, and I'm a Notre Dame guy all day, every day. Anytime, any place, you'll see me ramping up with my Notre Dame, and I'm fired up when it's about college football, especially about my Irish. What I do want to say, though, is how do you feel that now that I believe this week or sometime this week, they're going to have a hearing over the paying players and all that. How do you feel all of a sudden now the SEC wants to regulate all this since we are all able to pay players?
Well, I have to plead a little ignorance in that I know that this is going down. We've talked about it many times here in regards to leading up to this, but I don't know what this hearing's about because it has been decided that the media rights distribution portion will go to the players. Like schools are eligible to take at least 22 million of that money to distribute to the players. So I don't know. I'm going to have to look into what exactly is being decided.
Yeah, it was kind of like ironic to me because like I said, I've been hearing bits and pieces of everything. I don't have the whole information. I'm not going to sit here and tell you.
All right, we're going to find this as you're talking, Lewis. I'll see if I can find this.
Yeah, because like what's bothering, I guess, is like I always said it. Notre Dame has always played the good Samaritan. Like we're so good junior Boy Scouts and we play by the rules and all that. And now that we're able to play players and the Big Ten and all these schools starting to cough up some money, and I'm starting to hear a lot of people in the SEC. Oh, we need to regulate this. We need to do this. We need to do that. And I get upset because okay. Put with your money where your mouth is at. You know what I mean? Hey, we're in this now, and you're starting to see what Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. We're starting to open up our piggy banks, and we ain't going to be shy about paying players. And I love the fact that Notre Dame is actually putting on the gloves and going toe to toe and going after everyone and anyone that should and belongs to Notre Dame. And thanks to Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff, I'm just thrilled to have the coach that we do.
Well, what Notre Dame and others are doing, Michigan's at the front of this too, as you just mentioned, is they're basically just utilizing their enormous alumni base and just the massive wealth that they have because of the caliber of schools to take advantage of NIL. Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing at all. It just feels real good that now that the tide is starting to turn, and now you're starting to hear that SEC is I wouldn't say no longer. I still think SEC is one of the strongest conference, and it's going to take a little bit more than just these last 2-3 years that the Big Ten and Notre Dame is starting to throw their weight into the ring. But yeah, I mean, and again, like look at the players that Hartline is bringing in at Ohio State as a receiving coach, a head recruiter. Now we got Mickens up in there. Now we got our new running backs coach in there. It's pretty good to see Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, and Notre Dame in the Final Four. That was something very was very like revealing because like the blue collars of college football is coming back. And as a college fan, I mean that's the beauty of it. I mean, I just don't like how people over there crying and all of a sudden want to find ways to get that whole SEC chant going on. I don't care.
You're down on the SEC.
Oh man, I'm just like I said, bro. I was waiting for this moment. I am 45 years old. For 30 something years, I have suffered with my Notre Dame since I saw them lose to Boston College. I was 13 years old. I was hooked on Notre Dame football ever since then. I was hooked with Lou Holtz. It's a long story about me, but Notre Dame gives that those type of when they used to have like the Tony Rice and Jerome Bettis, I'm pretty much in that neck of the woods,
Sure.
And Notre Dame meant a lot to me personally because it gave me hope for something better in life, and to see Notre Dame competing and actually backing up their coach and in their fighting and paying their coaches to elite level again, it's like a like a miracle happened that Notre Dame is starting to be what Notre Dame should have been a long time ago. But I think they're doing it with the right coach. And it just means that much more to me as a Notre Dame fan and to all the fan base out there.
Yeah. So at the time that Notre Dame hired Marcus Freeman, this was my thought. I didn't say this is a terrible hire. I did not say this is a slam dunk. I tended to say I'm leaning slam dunk, but what I'm saying is Brian Kelly is a known commodity. We know that he's a top flight coach. Now he's having trouble pushing LSU to the top, just like he had issues pushing Notre Dame to the top. He's a good coach. We know what he did elevating Notre Dame to a certain level. Marcus Freeman's more of a potential home run hire that is probably going to have some missteps because of his inexperience his first couple of years. And he did. Marshall, Stanford, Northern Illinois. But what we're seeing here is when you find somebody who's that much of a born and developed leader of men, charismatic guy that just inspires people and all that, you take the risk with the youth and the inexperience that he's gonna figure it out. There's gonna be a couple bumps in the road, but he's gonna figure it out. And long term, that's the better hire.
I was like, before the season started, I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna confess a feeling, and I'm gonna be upfront. I said something on some other call-in show. I said, you know what, Notre Dame, you need to sign Marcus Freeman right now to a long extension contract. This is back in July because Dumbo over there at Ohio State, if he doesn't win the Natty, they're going to fire him. They're going to fire him. They're going to come after our coach. Well, you know what? Thank you for winning the Natty, and thank you for keeping him because guess what? We got our coach, and I love every moment of that part. You know what I mean? But
he's impressive. He is impressive. Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, I'm a ball player. I played football back in the days. I played soccer. And it was just something about Marcus Freeman from the moment that we had him as a defensive coach. And I saw his attitude, his swag, his persona. It's just like, it was contagious. And I saw it as a fan, as a fan. If that pumped me up every day, and I'm sorry, I'm going to let you know, I'm a diehard Notre Dame all day, every day. This is Irish right here. This is Notre Dame live. This is country live right here. We're ready to go. I'm so excited about this football season. We got an offensive line. We got a coach. We got this, guys. Let's go, Irish. There's so much to be proud of. There's so much to be excited about. It's about time we have a coach that loves this university, and we love him right back. How about
Yeah!
Irish? Where you at, Notre Dame fans? Let's show up all day, every day, no matter where we at. We show up and pump. We ain't your grandpa's Notre Dame anymore. We got a mouth, my boy, and we ready to go and tangle whoever it is, any day, any place. Let's put them up. We are the Fighting Irish, and we will fight with Notre Dame and our coach all day, every day.
Lewis, I'm going to hire you to give speeches like that to potential sponsors and for super chats here.
Now, you know what's funny?
You do that.
Thank you, Mark. Look, what's funny is that, like I told you, like, to be honest with you, over the summer, like I'm going through something personally. I was really sick. I was really, really down. And my oldest son, my man, the beauty about children, like they know you and you know them, And my son was like, Dad, I feel like you're falling into like a depression mode because like all you do is work at home. He goes, why don't you participate in these call-in shows? You listen to them. And I've been watching you since 2022. But it was another guy that did the Notre Dame voice, something like that, right? I listened to some of the other podcasters. I listened to other people about Notre Dame football and college football in general, and even some other teams here and there.
Maybe our guy, Brian Driscoll?
Nah,
the Brian Driscoll guy.
Oh, I'm not a Driscoll guy. Yeah, I'd rather not say.
Okay, we'll leave Brian aside. I don't know why you don't like Brian, but man, he's just about the most knowledgeable guy I know.
I think he's very, very. He has great content. He has really great content. But I'll just leave it as that.
You're a John Kennedy guy. Is it John Kennedy?
That's my man right there. Yes, sir.
All right.
John Kennedy is my boy. I met him. I met him at Notre Dame because Always Irish podcast and other guys encouraged me to go to South Bend for the first time. And I went there with my son, and it was one of those experiences that the fan base, they all know who I am, and I thank them. And like I said, like I called into that show Always Irish over the summer because my son saw something about me that wasn't right, and ever since then, my life has changed around. It's been one of the things that has kept me in my sobriety. I'm here drinking Diet Coke and talking about football. There's nothing better in the world to talk about that than this. And I'm glad that you're doing this too, because I've been wanting to call you because I like the way you are as a person and as a host. Like you keep it a good balance, Mellow. You know what I mean? You have this little swag about you, bro, that's classy and nice and polite. You're not very like standoffish or like arrogant or anything like that. I'm gonna keep it a buck, bro. I keep it 100. Like I tell people before, this ain't your old Notre Dame team. This ain't a guy that's gonna tell you, hey, goodbye and how's it going. And I'll let you know something about that. When me and my son were out there in South Bend, and it was a 52 seconds left on the Indiana game, me and my son started chanting, "We want Georgia." Believe it or not, we were told to sit down and be quiet because the game wasn't over. And I started snapping at them fans. I said, boy, I'm from California. Even though I live in Nevada, my roots are from Fresno, California, where the Fresno State Bulldogs are from. And we don't stay quiet, my boy. We know when we got this in the wraps. So start bringing Georgia because we were ready for them since the moment they hit 127. I knew we were going after Georgia. So I'm one of those type of fans. You know what I mean? I'm one of those type of fans that I will ride with my team and I'll stand in the paint and I stand on business when it's about Notre Dame football.
Well, I got to say that the next time you're in that Always Irish chat, you got to put in a good word for me because this was about, I don't know when this was, maybe a year ago. I go in the Always Irish chat. I never do this. I don't go in other people's shows. I don't watch other people. I just don't, nothing against anyone else because there are a ton of excellent people out there, but it's just not my thing. So I don't go into chats, don't make comments. But I just finished up here. Boom, it popped up. Always Irish is on. Okay, we'll hear what they had to say. And this must have been leading into, maybe this was leading into the 2023 season. Was it that long ago? Regardless of when it was, I saw some ignorant comments. I go in there, I make a very mild comment. Well, first of all, I didn't realize that anybody was going to recognize me. I just figured I could go in there just like anybody else and just make a comment. And all of a sudden, that's Mark Rogers. He hates Notre Dame. And these people are just attacking me left and right. And the only issue I had, Lewis, with Notre Dame fans, not everyone, but
Right.
a collection of Notre Dame's going into the 2022 and 2023 games against Ohio State was number one. Now, Ohio State fans were also being ridiculous, blurting out, we're going to win
Oh, yeah.
52-10 and 42-3 and all this other business. What are we getting to here?
This is our Kenny right here. And my
Very
boy
nice.
John Kennedy has one too. And a lot of my guys have it. My Goolsby too
yes.
has one.
So Ohio State fans were being ridiculous in their score predictions, but I'm okay with score predictions either way. Make your stupid score predictions. It's going to be wrong, whatever. The issue I had with Notre Dame fans is, number one, them saying, many of them, that Notre Dame was a better program than Ohio State. Well, that hasn't been the case for over 30 years, number one. And number two, that they were stating that, you've got no chance in this game. Like, I was legitimately seeing those comments, and I was saying, I, as an Ohio State supporter and Ohio State fans, they shouldn't be saying that about Notre Dame, let alone Notre Dame should not be saying that against Ohio State. So it's just typical college football talk, and everybody goes crazy and gets delusional about their team. So that's fine.
And I'll be realistic. When we had a Fine Fart's best friend over there, Brian Kelly, now, because it was funny. Fine Fart, Stephen A. Smith, Half Dome Mountain, Yosemite National Park hairline over there, and Feinbaum, they were talking so much about Notre Dame. And look, I get it. You got reasons for business reasons to talk whatever you got to talk for ratings and whatever. Okay. But what I got upset, and this is very true, Notre Dame, I believe that Notre Dame choose not to participate in everything with Brian Kelly because the way Brian Kelly was and carried himself every time that he had success, he wanted more money or he was looking for a new job, basically. I think Notre Dame just gave up on that. Once they backed up Marcus Freeman, and Marcus Freeman understood how bad certain depth charts and talent was, you cannot. Let's be real. 2022, 2023, we were on talent-wise, we were behind Ohio State. But you know what Ohio State did? Ohio State kept the Midwest up there with the SECs when the SECs were just the powerhouse for everything. Why? Because we know what was going on. Pay the players and hush money here and there. We all knew it, but we couldn't do nothing about it. Thank you, Ohio State, for keeping the Midwest up there. Next thing you know, Marcus Freeman comes in and immediately changes the talent. Yes, like you said, there was a growing pain that we were going to go through, but I believed in Marcus Freeman from the moment that we had him as a defensive coordinator. The moment, like, I hope that guy becomes our coach. And there was a one interview when Brian Kelly was golfing where he had made a comment that the next head football coach is already in the coaching. He's in the coaching staff in between those lines. I don't want to get into exactly what he said.
Was Brian Kelly golfing when he should have been recruiting? Was that what he was doing? Yeah.
Exactly. And there's more that I'm leaving out because, like I said, I want to keep it rated G. But he's the one that made the comment like that. So I knew Brian Kelly was already out, but it also gave me hope that finally the 12 years, like he said, he went to LSU because there was more resources. Let's be real. You went over there because you could play players that you wanted to play, and we weren't going to do it. But guess what? As soon as you left, next thing you know, you have Notre Dame actually doing it legit and properly on this NIL type of thing. Started stepping up, paying the coaches, start going out. I just believe that now that we have that coach and he evaluated the talent base, and I mean, we're still not there. I don't think we're fully there, but I will say this, we're a lot closer than we've ever been. And he is showing you why he was special. The game against Georgia, right? Like, Not only did our defense play it up to a level that no one has ever seen, but to see us win Georgia on special teams, and it really wasn't on offense, that lets you know we got something cooking. We got something brewing right there. We making this pot stew real good. We just got to get a couple of more ingredients, and we're on full steam ahead. You know what I mean? But that just shows you what Notre Dame did on the SEC without an offense. They won by special teams and it's great defense. And that just showed like that meant a lot to me because that game was one of the remarkable games for me and for Notre Dame. And then to see Marcus Freeman win the first playoff game in South Bend, that meant me being there and experiencing that and meeting John Kennedy and meeting all these other people that I met through spaces and stuff like that. I mean, like I said, this chain right here is a change of solidarity, strength, and honor. And I always carry with me, and everybody sees me in the airport, and a lot of people with Mike Singer too. I met each and every one of them. Everybody has been very genuine to me and has been very polite as well. I give respect to receive respect. And again, sir, like, you know what? Notre Dame's back, my boys. Notre Dame's there. And there's so many reasons why we should feel the way we feel. Because when I saw you had a talk show, I immediately said, how can we? Because you know what? This is Notre Dame, my boy. All these kids out there, there's a reason to come to South Bend because we got something that no other university has. We have a life after college football. We have a life after the NFL. You want to come to Notre Dame? You got a coach. Come and be part of something greatness. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, I appreciate it, Lewis. We got to move on. We got other
Yes,
people
sir.
on the line. So thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, I will. And
Good
I'll
to
put a
see
word
ya.
for you. For here, I'll call back again. See you. Have a good night.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Lewis.
Let's go, Irish!
Lewis is fired up tonight, and I'm guessing he's been fired up for a long time. So good to hear from Lewis. And been watching since 2022. I like to hear those little nuggets when people call in, and I'm like, I've never seen this person before. Who knows? Maybe they're watching for the first time or have no idea what's going on here or who I am. And then they said, no, I've been watching since 2022. We're going to pay some bills here, and then we're going to get to all of your calls. We got to get to Ben and Timothy, and we'll do that. Since I've got your attention, Disputed National Champions. It's our book about the 1990s. It's not a history book, though, folks. Not a history book. I love history, but this is not a history book. We dissect every season of the 1990s. Why? It's the most impactful, most formative decade in determining the national championship system in the history of college football. The 1990s. We go season by season. We set up the season. We talk about the preseason hype, who the expected contenders would be, and then we go through the season, the big games, the controversial plays, all of it. Then we set up the final regular season rankings and how that set up the postseason matchups. We go through the postseason, the bowl games, how that played out, and then we talk about the final rankings. Thank you, Adam. We'll get to your super chat, sir. Then we go through the final rankings and we let you know who got left out, who got screwed, and then what is the final synopsis of this particular season. There's a historical angle and an impact to every college football season that says, okay, what did this season tell us? Was this the dawning of an era? Was this the birth of a dynasty, the end of a dynasty, a coaching legend, whatever the case might be? But again, not just a history book. You can get this on Amazon, Disputed National Champions. We take all of these seasons in the 1990s and we plug them into the BCS era, the 4-team college football playoff era, the 12-team, the 14-team. It's right here at the links in the description section of this video and every video. And also, you can just go to Amazon, put in Disputed National Champions. It should pop right up. So thank you for that. You will enjoy it. And Adam, thank you so much for the recommendation, which leads us to, of course, Adam's super chats. And we will also remind everyone, because we know you love recruiting, transfer portal. Sure, Mark. Yeah, there's recruiting in a transfer portal. No, we've got a live update every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Leanne Herring and myself Is it here? No, it's on the recruiting channel. Got a recruiting channel. Jackson, thank you so much for posting the recruiting link. Again, that's the link to the recruiting channel. All right, let's get through Adam's super chats. Thank you so much, Adam. Mark, South Carolina and Florida were among the 12 best teams and should have made the playoff. Choosing Boise State and SMU reflects the flaws in the selection system. Okay, if you were just asking, Mark, who were the 12 best teams in college football last year? I would have said, even before the playoffs started, because of course, hindsight is 2020, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Notre Dame. Those are the only 7 teams that I would have said for sure. Am I missing anyone? I don't think so. Not talking about earning a playoff spot. Hang on. Like Clemson won the ACC. I get it. Arizona State won. I'm not talking about earning a spot. I'm just talking about who are the 12 best teams in the country. Those are the 7 that I know. Ole Miss. Yeah. Anyway, those are the 7 that I know at the conclusion of the regular season were among the 12 best. Then after that, I'm into earning spots. Of course, Clemson won the ACC and Arizona State won the Big 12. Boise State, that's the system, Adam. They earned the spot for winning their conference in the group of 5 and being the highest ranked and most deserving of the group of 5 teams. 12 best teams in the country last year: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Georgia, Tennessee. Texas is 6, Notre Dame 7. This is, of course, not in order. Then I'm going Miami was probably the best team in the ACC last year. They probably were. Arizona State. If Arizona State was one of the 12 best, we're at 9. Then it's a difficult call, because then Arizona State, they were really no better. I know they played a remarkable playoff game, but leading into that, really, Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, of course, Arizona State earned it by bludgeoning Iowa State in the championship game. Yes, South Carolina, I believe Ole Miss. I believe Ole Miss was the best of the non-playoff participants in the SEC. I would go Ole Miss, South Carolina, Bama, Florida. But I get your point. You're looking at the end of the season as well. So Adam leans toward rewarding the teams that closed. Who are the best teams right now? Not who the best teams composite September 1st all the way till now. He's about who are the best teams right now. Mark, do you think a 1995 national champion Nebraska would have beaten 2024 Ohio State? Well, that's one of those measuring eras against each other. The 1995 national champion Nebraska team was far and away more dominant against their peers than Ohio State. Of course, they won all their games. And also that Nebraska team, that is the last team in college football that dominated the entire schedule, that was not challenged the entire season. Their closest game, I believe, was a 2-touchdown win against Washington or Washington State, or a 17-point win, but it wasn't even that close. They had one fairly close game, and it wasn't that close. Every team that's won a national championship since then has been in a dogfight against somebody, and usually a team that's not even that good. So they were the last team to dominate their schedule start to finish all the way through. But I am a believer that the athletes are getting better. And if you're talking 2024 team against a 2014 team or a 2005 team, I don't really see the difference. But obviously, if that's my belief throughout history, then I can't be biased against a certain era. Although the evolution of the game is not in a straight trajectory. There are, once nutrition and weightlifting and all of that became nearly perfected, there's got to be a flat line to a certain extent. And maybe that's what's transpired in the last 20 or 25 years. That 1995 Nebraska team was pretty limited passing the football. I got to think that they don't win that game. All right, then we got Ryan with this one. Thank you, Ryan, for your contribution. What's your opinion on a 60 to 75 school super league? My thoughts are, why would schools that just moved conferences go back to playing regional schools, possibly for less money? Well, if we had the top 60 to 75 schools, right now there are 70, Ryan, in the power conference structure. So you're basically saying only kick a few of them out, or maybe keep all of them and add Boise State, Tulane, Memphis, whoever. So, well, no, I don't want a super league. I'm a traditionalist. I'm a purist. I want the SEC to be the SEC, and I want the Big Ten to be the Big Ten, and the Big 12 to be, well, the Big 12 is part Pac-12 and part American Conference and part this and that. But the core is still the Big 12 and, of course, the ACC. That's what I want. I would like a West Coast conference to still be there called the Pac Conference. So in terms of the football on the field, it would be exciting. It would be great. It would consolidate things more in terms of the product on the field. But in terms of tradition, prestige, brand, pageantry, the fabric of the sport nationally, this none of this is good. Why would schools that just moved conferences go back to playing regional schools? Possibly for less money. Meaning, why would UCF go back and be relegated to a Florida Central Florida area and then that region? What's come home to roost to a certain extent is that I made a video how many years ago? It's when UCF was hot, 2017, 2018, and said the ACC should go get UCF. That would have been a good get. That alumni base is enormous. Orlando, Disney. The ACC would have a slightly better conference now. I'm not saying that it would have been some kind of coup like Central Florida's Notre Dame or something, but all right. Timothy, what's going on? Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Hey, how are we doing? That caught me off guard a little bit.
Well, thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. I love college football. I could have sat here for an hour and waited. Wouldn't have been a big deal.
Well, I appreciate it.
Okay, so the reason I'm calling in is because I love college football, and you keep talking about how you want teams to earn a way into the playoff.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a lot of free time on my hand, and I've actually made a PowerPoint about this. And I think they should change the conference championship weekend.
Okay, let me interrupt you quickly, Jason. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Jason's comment. Timothy, to ask you, what is your goal? Like, different people that devise these things are gunning for something different. Some people want to go back to tradition-rich conferences. Other people want just like the best teams to be playing. What is your purpose?
The goal is to make sure that you still get the best teams in the playoff, but to give every conference a chance to make it, not to give every conference an automatic bid, just a chance to make it. But it's still to guarantee that you get, and you got to expand it to 16 teams.
Okay, what's your system?
Okay, so the way it would work is you change conference championship weekend into conference playoff weekend. And you would expand the Big Ten and SEC conference playoff weekend into the top 6 teams. So let me pull it up. So for the SEC, Texas would host Alabama in the playoff weekend.
Based on
Georgia,
last year's standings.
yep, Georgia would host Missouri, and Tennessee would host Ole Miss. Whoever wins makes it.
Not to interrupt, but I am again. There was a 6-team logjam in the SEC at 5-3. Who makes
Yep.
that decision of who gets those spots?
It's got to come down to tiebreakers, point differential, points scored.
Okay.
Yeah, there needs to be a clear tiebreaker. But the way I have it set up is there's 13 play-in spots and there's 3 open spots. So in this scenario, let's say Texas loses to Alabama and people are upset. Texas should still be in because they're the number 1 seed. Maybe they were like 3rd in the country at that point. They can still get voted in. So there's still 3 available spots. And this would clearly allow the better team in if they were to win. They have to win though. But this gives 6 teams from the SEC a clear path to the playoff. It gives 6 teams.
I'm sorry, I missed something, Timothy. 6 plays 3, 4 plays 5?
No, 1 plays 6.
Oh,
2 plays 5, and 3 plays 4.
okay. All right. So you
So
got 3 winners and 3 losers, and this is the final weekend of the season.
yep. So, but with this
Okay.
is the difference is
All
the
right.
Big Ten and the SEC get 3. They get 3 playoff spots, and the ACC and the Big 12 they get 2. So in the Big 12, well, actually the ACC is a little bit more exciting. In the ACC, it would be SMU versus Syracuse and Clemson versus Miami on conference playoff weekend.
When you say that these conferences either get 3 or 2, you're saying after you ran all this, they get 3 or 2, or that's a requirement every season under your system?
That's the guaranteed every season. And the only reason I gave the Big Ten and the SEC 3 and the Big 12 and the ACC 2 is because the Big Ten and the SEC basically control the playoff format coming up. Like they have a huge say in what's going to happen. So I think they should each get 1 extra team and just kind of agree to the format to give everyone else a chance. Because I've heard they want 4 guaranteed spots. I think that's
4.
crazy.
Yeah, I did a series of videos, and I got actually the numbers right in front of me. I ran their requirements through 2014 through 24, and there are some times that they wouldn't have 4, and somebody has to get propped up from like Minnesota, number 25 in the country, up into the playoff.
Exactly.
Purdue would have made the playoffs in 2022. They were unranked.
Exactly. And if there was ever 4 SEC teams or 4 Big Ten teams under like the format that I have it set up, it's because there was a underdog that upset somebody in the conference playoff, and they still put in the number 1 team. Like if Iowa were to beat Oregon in the Big Ten, if it were to happen, Oregon would still get voted in, and that would give them 4 Big Ten teams in the playoff because Iowa would have stole the spot from Oregon.
All right. So do the SEC and the Big Ten have an opportunity? Okay. All right. So anyway, we got 16 teams, and that's 3, 6, 10 spots that you've just mentioned coming from those 4 conferences.
Yes. So the other 3 spots are what some people call the group of 5. I think it's going to be the group of 6 starting in like a season or 2, which is the Pac-12. I think the way they should handle that is, and this would encourage teams from smaller divisions to possibly transfer to a bigger division and into Division 1, because they would have a clear path to the playoff, and it could create some good teams in the group of 6 because they'd have a clear path. And the clear path is to make it to conference. It'd still be conference championship weekend for the group of 6. And the winners of their conference championship weekend would advance to the next weekend, which is the same weekend as Army-Navy game.
Okay.
And you could have it on a rotation, or you could just have the same matchup every season. But the way I have it is the Pac-12 champion versus the Mountain West champion, and the winner makes the tournament. Then I have the MAC versus the Sun Belt, and then I have Conference USA versus the American Athletic. And
are you going to rotate that every year, or that's going to be set? And what happens if
they
the
can
two
rotate?
best group of 5 champions are playing each other, and the rest of these are a bunch of scrubs? Some kind of situation like that.
Well, I mean, based off this year, it wouldn't have been that way because Boise State was pretty good. UNLV was okay.
I admire your system, but you
Oh.
know that you can't base a system based on one year's results.
Oh yeah, I understand that, but just based off like even in recent, like within the last 5 years, you got to think of Cincinnati come out of the American Athletic. They were really good, and it's amazing that they even got a chance in the 4 playoff system. And in the system now, they could be that good, and Boise State could be slightly ranked higher, and I think they'll just be ignored simply because they're a group of 5 team. And the whole playoff system is just set up for the Power 4, and they're trying to leave the Big 12 and the ACC out. They're like trying to push them out too, it looks like. And I think they should open the doors to everybody, and it's 3 teams. And when you look at it, there's 64 teams available in the group of 6, including the Pac-12. There's only 3 teams that come out of it to make the playoffs. And when you look at the group of the Power 4, there's 68 teams. And this gives 10 teams an automatic way to get in from that group. And it gives 20 teams an opportunity to make it. And that's almost 1/3 of the entire Power 4. And they have a way of playing in. Right now, there's
10 teams from the power conferences, 3 teams from the group of 6.
Yep.
Well, based on the score results between those 2 levels of football, the power conferences and the group of 5/6 conferences, that's actually a good lean for the group of 5 or 6. They only win like 10 to 15% of those games. They're not worthy of those spots.
And then they should just be dropped from college football. They should be dropped from Division 1.
Maybe they should.
Yeah, because the same way it works in college basketball, how everybody gets a chance, even though they get an automatic bid. I don't think that the MAC conference championship should give them an automatic bid into the playoff. I do think that they should face another group of 6 conference champion, and the winner should make it because the conference championship needs to be worth something if they're still going to be playing it.
And the Big 10, SEC, ACC, Big 12 champion is the team that wins this little. Who's the champion out of the conference after they play this little 1 versus 6 deal?
Since they expanded the playoffs to 12, who cares?
Well, there's got to be
it doesn't even matter anymore. Champion. The only reason they still play the conference championship games is for money. It's because of how much money they generate from it. So if they were to just expand the conference championship to conference playoff games, they would get money from 3 games.
We are never going to have another SEC champion in the history of college football.
It would just be who is number 1. But right now, it would be really hard to determine just based off point spread or anything else, just simply because there's like 18 teams in the SEC. And it's impossible for all of them to face each other in the conference.
I'm
like
not
in a conference
real comfortable with that.
Realistically, they should split the conference in half, and have everybody on one side of the conference play each other once in the season, and it would determine who's best in that side, and then do the same thing on the other side, and that would determine who is a real conference champion instead of how they do it now.
I think you're also going to confuse a lot of people. I don't think most people, I know most people aren't locked in like we are to what's going on in all these crazy formats. And when you're playing all sorts of odd formatted playoffs within conferences, I don't think people can generally follow that.
I know. They wanted to call into a voice line like it's American Idol and vote who they want into the playoffs, because that's what conference football is. It's just it's a popularity contest, but there needs to
Timothy,
be
who's selecting the playoff teams?
it's just the playoff committee.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, all you got to do is go tickle the right guy and give him a little bit of money, and he'll vote for whoever he wants.
I am intrigued by this, and I've heard variations of this model with the play-in, whether that's a 2-week build-up that some people have proposed wiping out the last 2 weeks of the regular season and making those completely off the schedule, and they're just certainly formed by the standings, and doing that for 2 weekends.
And with you saying like the group of 5 only wins like 15% of the games,
Yeah.
I hear you on that, and I totally agree with you. I just think that within like maybe 5 to 10 years, there could be a couple teams that really come out of the group of 5 that'd be really good if they were given an opportunity and a clear path to the playoffs, because there'd be a reason for quarterbacks to go there. But also, like with the group of 5, and you talking about them only winning 15%. Well, when it comes down to the playoffs, I'm pretty sure right now, whoever makes the Final Four, they get this big bonus that's given to the team.
Yes.
That's another reason they want so many Big Ten and SEC teams in the playoffs, is because of that bonus. Well, if there are 3 group of 5 or 6 teams to make the playoffs, the college football committee would set up the scheduling, and they would put Marshall against Oregon in the first round, and Marshall would never beat Oregon. But within a 10-year period, maybe there's one team that will, given the opportunity, but they're worried about that money, and they don't want one of these teams to make the Final Four and get that money. And they could set it up towards the hardest path possible for these teams to do it, and they would almost never do it. But they don't even want to give them a chance. I think that's ridiculous.
Boise State had more than a chance. They had a bye.
Yeah, they got way too much this year.
So
But that's only one team.
For a group of 5 team to elevate to that semifinal position, they have to win 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, they'd have to win 3, because they would still need to win 2 conference playoff games.
To win Okay, well, it's an intriguing system. It's a little convoluted for me. Like, I get it. It's not convoluted. It's very structured, but I think it's convoluted for the public.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think it's only like that because there's no structure to the playoff right now. They really, really want to keep the conference championship game around, and that's why they gave it so much value and gave them the automatic buys. But I think they should just expand conference championship to conference playoff weekend. They can make more money, and it gives more teams an opportunity to make the playoffs. And the way that I have it set up, the example I always give people is, people thought Ole Miss or Alabama should have made the playoffs, and they thought IU shouldn't have made the playoffs based off their schedule, even though they had lost 1 game. Well, the way I have it set up, IU, if they lost on conference playoff weekend, they would not get in. There's no way they're getting voted in for those final 3 spots. So it still puts the best of the best in, and it would still give Alabama and Ole Miss a chance to get in, instead of hoping to get voted in.
IU would have either been the 2 or 3 seed, depending on their tiebreaker with Penn State at 8-1, and they would have either played.
They would have been the 3, because Penn State already made the conference play. They already made the conference championship. So whatever system they have in place,
you're
put
right.
Penn State there.
Yeah. So Indiana would have been the 3. They would have been playing the 4. They would have been playing Ohio State again.
Yep, and IU would have been home in that situation. Ohio State still would have probably would have steamrolled them. But at least we would have known who was the better team. Ohio State already beat them that earlier in the season, but it was kind of close. And then Ohio State losing to Michigan on the final game of the season, it kind of made you question them a little bit.
So if Indiana's 10-1, they play Ohio State and they lose by a field goal, you think they're done?
I think they're done. I don't think they get in. And I'm an IU fan, and as an IU fan, I would love to see them just have a chance at making the playoffs again.
Yeah. So for me, I can't answer this question, but for me, that kind of performance actually validates their playoff worthiness more so than going out and beating Purdue by 66 points on the final weekend. That's a more valid result, losing to Ohio State by a field goal than beating Purdue by 9 touchdowns.
They could still possibly get voted in because there's still 3 spots available. But even if they lost to Ohio State, Notre Dame's definitely taking that spot. They're taking 1 spot. So then there's 2 spots available. There's a chance that Ole Miss loses by a field goal last second to whoever they're playing, maybe Georgia, and they get the spot.
Yep.
And then there's still a 3rd spot available. I don't know. Maybe it'd be Clemson and Miami. Maybe Miami loses to a last second field goal, and for some other reason they want to give the ACC 3 spots, but I don't see that. But
so for me, Timothy, all of this gets corrected. The first step in correcting all of this is to address scheduling. So that needs to be addressed first and foremost, because that has such a bearing on the records of these teams and how they're perceived. And when Indiana can go out and schedule Charlotte, FIU, and some FCS school, and USC schedules Notre Dame and LSU, it's just a joke.
Alabama does the same thing. I mean, they played Mercer.
Yeah, Alabama also goes out and plays somebody.
Those games shouldn't count. Like, I think they should get 1 tune-up game, but I think that should be forced week 1. And I also think
week 1 is going to be nothing but Alabama and everyone else playing an FCS team.
It's pretty close to how it is now. Week 0 is sometimes like that, but week 0 you have like
week
Texas.
1 is like that. If we read through the week 1 schedule, it wouldn't look like that.
Are we talking about week 0 or week 1?
Week 1, when everyone plays. Not everyone plays week 0. There's only like 3 games.
There's more than that, but yeah, I agree. It's like 7. Then what am I thinking of? Week 2?
Well, those FCS games in September are spread among the first 3 weeks of the season. So there's not this glut of horrendous matchups.
They almost shouldn't exist.
Well, you're right. From a competitive standpoint, they should not exist. However, we both know that why can't I find college football on the ESPN site?
Seeing those matchups is like watching the Los Angeles Lakers play the Indiana Mad Ants. Like, what's going on? Like, well, they only do this once a year.
Yeah, I don't watch those kind of games. They're just atrocious. But yeah, and people make fun of the teams in the SEC, but they generally don't play any more of those kind of games, except for playing 4 non-conference games compared to 3 for the Big 12 and the Big 10. So they play more FCS games, but they also play, I think actually the SEC only played 1 more FCS game this year than the Big 10, but they also play more tough games too, because they play one additional non-conference game. They just play them late in the season, and people have a problem with that.
Something that I've seen tossed around is like having 1 week where it's like SEC teams versus Big Ten teams. And I think that would actually help the playoff scheduling quite a bit as well, just to kind of get an idea of which conference is better than the other. Or they should play more conference games, because the problem is when they play 8 conference games, like they're doing this based off when the conference used to be much smaller, and they've never expanded conference play game, like conference season.
Oh, yeah. There has never been this level of disparity in schedules within a conference.
Yeah, there's too many teams.
Sure, when you've got 18 teams in the Big Ten and you've only got 9 conference games, then you miss 8 of the teams in the conference. In the SEC, you got 16 teams, you play 8 games, you miss 7 teams in the conference.
Yep.
Yes.
That
there's your week 0 right there. You got 4 games and you've got only 1 power conference matchup. So, all right, Timothy, anything else?
No. I just love college football. Just trying to find some structure to the playoffs format.
I hear
really
you. I'm with you. I'm always looking to do this differently, and I had a format I proposed a long time ago that took this committee out of it and just made it an objective system, just like, let's say, the NFL. But I am with you. Thanks for the call, Timothy.
Thank you. I'll be calling back.
Appreciate it. Let's take on Joe. Our buddy Joe's calling in tonight. Joe, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. Just watching or listening to that last caller, and I don't know. I think that college football blew it by jumping from 4 teams to 12. They should have just gone to 8. And if that worked out to not be good enough, to have enough representation of very good teams, then you can go to 12. But I'm pretty sure if you get the top 8, there shouldn't be too many arguments about finishing 9th. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to include everybody. And I think if you have the top 8 and then you just play them 1 versus 8, 2, 7, I mean, I think they're trying to make it a lot more difficult than it needs to be. You just have to agree that, everyone has to agree that, no matter how big the conferences get, 8 teams get in. That's it, and you vote on, you have that committee vote on what they've done throughout the season.
Well, let's understand that regardless of where the cutoff is, whether it's 4 teams, 8 teams, 12 teams, 14 teams, 16 teams, there's always going to be a glut of teams. Actually, the more you expand it, the more number
Bubble
of
teams,
yes, have a legitimate gripe to get in.
Right. I agree with that, because there's going to be a lot more parity among
you have more parity. You have
further
less
back
teams
you go
at the top. Yeah, when you only had 4 teams, it's not like you had 6 teams that had a gripe to make the 4th spot. But when you get to 6, in the book that I wrote, I'm going through every season in the 1990s. It's crazy some seasons. And of course, I've done this during the college football playoff era. It's crazy some years. You see like 7 teams that are 9-3, and there's like 2 spots.
Right. Well, that's actually, they had all the different bowls when bowl games actually meant something, and it wasn't, always you're going to set up number 1, number 2. They moved to that, and then they moved to 4 teams. But, the bowl games, back in the days, I remember, the fun part of it was that you were having matchups, interconference, or, Yeah, interconference. Is that right? Where you have two different conferences meeting each other that you don't normally see them play each other. And that to me was what college football was fun, you know? But now with these conferences joining, I mean, the Pac-12 into the Big Ten and the best teams of the Big 12 now into the SEC, you know, you don't, everything and your old rivalries are going by the way.
Yep.
So, you know, all these things that used to, what really built college football and the attraction of it is now, you know, just gone to money, and that's all that really matters. The fans don't matter, and you know, the schools that, you know, might have a very good team get to play some very good team from another conference, and it's fun. It makes the whole New Year's Day bowl game schedule worth, you know, just sitting back and vegging out or beering out.
I am
But
with
I
you,
think,
Joe.
yeah, and one more thing I was going to say is, like, even going to 16 teams, you know, where it's gonna, it's does it even have an extra game, because you had conference buys, which actually proved to be terrible last year because the first game all four teams lost. So, you know, is it still the same amount of games because of that buy that you would have to make room for if you had 16 teams? I'm not sure, because I think, you know, if you wanted to really allow 16 teams and then you just go 116, 2, 15, that kind of thing,
Well, that's
I
one of
don't
the
think
reasons
anybody.
why. So basically, the reason for me, Joe, that they selected 12, there were two reasons instead of 8. Number one is to keep the conference championships viable, to keep them relevant, because if you go to 8, then you don't have any buys. Therefore, how do you reward conference champions? Just by giving them home games, I guess. But it
I don't
wasn't
think.
that big of an incentive. So that's number one. Number two, just simply more games is more money.
Right. Yeah. To me, I think, you know, you get your fanfare and you get your bragging rights if you win your conference, and that's it. I mean, other than that, I don't think there should be anything additional given to a conference championship. It's basically bragging rights. You get its trophy, you know.
You don't
That
think
to
a
me is,
conference championship should mean anything?
well, I don't think it should mean anything in terms of playoffs. I think, you
I,
know, with you win your conference, you get the bragging rights. You know,
I'm
you're
not
the
saying that
best team.
this is I'm not saying that anyone's, including your opinions, invalid, but it amazes me how many people don't think that a conference championship is valid or should be rewarded, but they believe that
I think
the
they got the reward. They won it.
hang on just a second. No, they didn't get a reward. What? No, they didn't. Yeah, they
Well,
got
they're
a
probably getting to
trophy.
the playoffs, right? That's a reward.
Depending, did Oregon get into the playoff because they won the Big Ten championship? No, they were already in the playoff. So was Georgia. So was fill in the blank. Depends on the year and the team. My point was going to be basically that it amazes me how many people in this day and age discredit conference championships, don't think that they matter or should matter, and don't want to reward a conference champion, which is a tangible, objective measure of what a team accomplished. But they want to continue to hand 13 people the power of selecting all the teams and where they should be seated, which is completely subjective. That
But then,
amazes me that people want to go
yeah.
that route and feel completely comfortable with that.
But then look what happened with those conference championships. The first game they played, every one of them lost.
So,
So that means it doesn't have. You get your credibility, you know, by winning. And they
obviously,
wound
they
up.
won the
They won their
conference championship.
championship.
What
They got
the
they got the
point that
credit for that.
so when a
But to get
team
a
wins a
bye,
division in the NFL and loses their first playoff game, that discredits their uh that
season, yeah, you win and move on. You know.
obviously, yeah, they didn't win in the playoffs, so they got knocked out of the playoffs. How that like I'm not understanding your point. First
Uh,
of all, two of the conference champions they got buys were heavy, heavy underdogs. because they came from inferior conferences.
Okay.
So, like, I heard this argument that the buys didn't help these teams anyway. Well, they were all underdogs, for one thing. They were all underdogs, according to the Vegas line. So there were no surprises in these teams losing their playoff game. And I
Well,
guarantee
that
you,
gives you the credibility of what a conference championship means. Then, if every one of those conference championships were these teams that go into their first game as an underdog, that doesn't say much for the conference championship.
well, much of that was an aberration.
Okay.
The number one team you're including the number one team in the country coming out of the Big Ten. They just happen to be an underdog because Vegas knew what most of us knew, that Ohio State had underachieved and they were actually still a better team and just the best team in the country, and they finally played like it. Notre Dame and Georgia was a situation where Georgia was an underdog because they lost their starting quarterback.
Well, Notre Dame lost 4 starters on defense. If you want to
I
start
understand that, but
saying this and that, I mean, there's no
well,
way
yeah, and
Ohio.
Georgia had other
Mark,
injuries
I'll tell you
too.
what. There is no way Ohio State would have scored 31 points on Notre Dame had they had their 2 edge rushers.
Okay, this is a completely different conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to start naming a quarterback,
we're all over the place. No, I am no. I am making valid reasoning. No. You're talking about game results. I'm talking about the Vegas line and what determines the Vegas line. And Carson Beck not being the Georgia starting quarterback impacted the Vegas line.
By how many points? And does it really matter? I mean,
exactly.
4,
6, something in that range.
I bet it wasn't. What was the final? It was like 2.5, wasn't it? And Georgia was the favorite, I think.
No, all 4 teams that lost those playoff games, the 4 teams that received the buys were underdogs.
That received the buys, okay.
So anyway,
I just
win conference championship should receive something for winning a conference. Or why are we playing conference championship games?
Well, I think those are going to be going by the wayside because
be.
unless they can just keep making money that way, and they'll keep them doing it.
Well, yeah, people watch the games, and I think that there needs to be a way. I've loved the conference championship games since they were first devised. Now, under this current system, they've been rendered pretty useless. So I either want to I can go 2 different directions on this. Either give viability and credibility back to these conference championship games or get rid of them. One or the other.
Well, I don't see the conferences wanting to throw away that money by getting rid of them. I think it's a whole lot of money that you're talking about, know. So I don't think that that'll happen, but I just my original point for calling in was just, to me, it seems like we're trying to make it so convoluted. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it should be either 8 teams or 16 teams, and then you're playing I think the same amount of games. I think it would come out to the same amount because of those buys. Sure. Because of those buys, like if I count that buy as a game, but it counts as a week is what I guess my point is.
Oh, you're talking about a buy in terms of you're not talking about a buy for a team in the playoff. You're talking about a buy meaning a week off.
A week in the schedule. Yeah. It's just taking up the schedule. It's going to be a week. Yeah. So if you look at what we just had, would it be the same amount as if you had 16 teams? And would you be happy with, Mark, would you be happy with 16 teams and that's it? Just no special treatment of the conference championship, just 1 through 16 ranking, let those 13 people make their choices.
No.
You wouldn't be happy with 16 teams?
No. Not with no. I am not happy with a selection committee I am happy with 16 teams because I'm the guy that when I was in high school wrote an essay in 1984 that said we should have a 16 team college football playoff. And I handed that in English class, and they didn't even know what a college football playoff was. Didn't know what I was talking about. But so I was thinking about that decades ago. But so, yeah, I would love to have a 16. Yeah, I think that's a bit much. We're going to have, if all you have to do is run the models on the previous seasons, and we're going to have all sorts of 9-3, 8-4 teams vying for playoff spots, and that might be a little watered down for my taste. But I don't like committees subjectively selecting teams. I don't know why we run sports.
I don't either, but this is what we have. Like, it's been that way forever.
Why? We don't have to have it
the
anymore.
AP, the UPI, the coaches poll. I mean, this
why
is
don't
what
we
we've
end
been
that?
doing.
If we're
because
pulling away from all sorts of other traditions, why don't we pull away from that tradition?
Because schools get to pick who they want to play out of conference, and so you're never going to have apples versus apples. You're never going to be able to measure equally.
If I'm the commissioner, we do, because we take if you've heard me say this, I'm guessing you have because you're here a lot, Joe.
Yeah, I listen to you a lot.
Take the scheduling out of the hands of the schools. That's where I would have my committee and a formula. It would be a formula-based schedule, but the committee could tweak it, and we would no longer.
How would they tweak it though, without you're getting them, to be too much involved?
I've explained that in other situations. I'm not going to go into that, but basically it would be a formula, but the committee would oversee the system because there are some nuances that I would want to have in play. But basically everyone would play an equitable non-conference schedule. There wouldn't be this crazy USC plays LSU and Notre Dame and Indiana plays 0. They play a bunch of high school teams. Like that's ridiculous. I don't know that USC wasn't better than Indiana and they were in the playoff. I'm not positive that Indiana was a better football team than USC.
I'm not either.
So I'm just not comfortable. And this is even with me saying that the committee has actually done an admirable job.
Yeah,
they've done fine. They've made a couple decisions I didn't agree with, but it wasn't anything egregious.
Well, I think they did an admirable job when it was 4 teams. This one left it
because they were a little bit up.
Because they were constrained into having to give a bye to a conference champion. And that, as we know, Arizona State was not a top 4 team, and Boise State was not a top 4 team, So that's what the constraints they had to deal with. But, if you take that away, the conference, to me, and it's not because I'm a Notre Dame fan and I don't belong to a conference. I just think the best teams I want to see in the playoffs. That's it. If it turns out it's a conference champion, all the more.
We don't know who objectively are the best teams.
Well, if you go to 8 teams, I don't think they should be able to complain about finishing number 9. And if I'm Notre Dame and they get number 9, tough beans. You know what I mean?
Well, I know it's tough beans, but there are situations in which the number 9 team in the country, I understand. Okay, let me back up just a little bit. When it was 4 teams, when we went from 2 to 4 from the BCS to the 14 playoff,
right?
Question to me
and the committee
and everybody else was, is this a good system? My answer was twofold. Part 1 was, yes, it's a good system simply because, not that it's a good system, but it's better than the other one because it at least affords 2 other teams, worthy teams, of an opportunity to win the national championship. But no, it's a flawed system because we got 5 conferences and 4 spots. That's stupid.
And a group of 5 gets an automatic bid. That's stupid.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I said, and a group of 5 gets an automatic bid, and that's stupid.
Well, that's when we went to 12, not when it was 4.
Yeah.
So The
But it's still
next
stupid.
the next point. So anyway, that was my analysis of that. I forget where we were going after
So
that.
I don't know. I'm just asking again. So you don't like the idea of just 8 teams? You want to get the conference champion to have more respect, more
Oh, so
power.
okay. When we were talking about whether teams have gripes, have a legitimate gripe, this was going to be my point. As long as your conference is represented by one team, which was not the case with 4 teams, obviously. So I thought
'Cause
that
there's
there was a gripe. The gripe was our entire conference got left out. But now you can get to the playoff. You have an automatic route to the playoff by winning your conference. So that gripe has been eliminated, that you at least have control over making the playoff. You didn't have that control in a 4-team playoff.
Yeah, but
You
the
can
problem with that, Mark, is that what if this conference is so weak that the guys that get a bye has got like 3 or 4 losses?
I'm not talking about buys. I'm just talking about getting into the playoff.
Okay.
I
Uh-oh.
believe that if you win a conference championship, you should be in the playoff. So,
But not get a bye.
so
Not necessarily getting a bye.
this is where I was headed. Was basically with 8 teams, it eliminates the gripe that, oh, we didn't have an opportunity to make the. Yes, you did. Win your conference.
Right.
Maybe that doesn't mean you didn't deserve to make the 18 field and you don't have an argument, but we've eliminated this leaving conferences out. Now, yes, there will be situations, whether you have an 18 playoff, a 12 team, a 14, a 16, where there will be teams left out that have just as solid a resume, just as valid a resume as teams that get in. The only difference is, can you really complain being the 17th team in the country?
Right.
But maybe you can, if you're following me here, you can complain if you're 9-3 and you got left out, and there's 4 other 9-3 teams that got in, and you can point to your schedule and say, we were just as good as them. I get your complaint, but you had ample opportunity not to lose 3 games. So I'm not crying over this,
Right.
but there is a decision to be made, and there's going to be teams that are going to be left out that have just as a valid of a resume.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but yeah, we shouldn't like this playoff this year. Anybody that didn't make it, okay, come on, you lost 3 football games, or in
Yeah.
BYU's case, I guess you only lost 2, but still.
And plus, out of the goodness of our heart, we invited a group of 5, like for no other reason but being a group of 5.
But
Out
they
of the
acquitted
kindness of
themselves pretty well.
what's that?
They acquitted themselves pretty well.
Yeah. But I mean, like, we want to talk about the best teams getting in, right? And so that's where, to me, it's like, if you have a conference that's weak and just because they won their conference championship, they get in, that to me is not fair because they're weak.
So did we have a conference this year that was so weak that their champion should not be in?
Well, Arizona State actually showed up to play Texas, and they did a
They
pretty
sure
damn
did.
good job of it. But other than that, everyone was, cracking on the Big 12 and the ACC. That's just what it was. But they got their people in, because of that bye. So yeah, that's what you get. And then even that they showed well. Like Clemson, I think won it, and so they played SMU, and it was a good battle. So they deserve to get in.
Well,
Even
no. Yeah,
actually, they
Clemson beat
lost it, and
SMU in the
yeah,
ACC championship game. Sure.
yeah. So
Clemson, how it turned out, actually played 3 games outside the conference against the SEC, and they lost all 3 games.
yeah, but I mean that's pretty intense schedule too. If you take that, and play all SEC teams as you're out of conference, that's a pretty
Yeah,
bold
sure.
way to schedule.
Yeah, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas. Yeah, that's pretty stout.
Yeah.
That's
So
better
I mean,
than
if they
Indiana.
had that record as a number group of 5 team that had a same record, who do you put in? Well, I'd go with Clemson just because they played a tougher schedule.
Well, how about this comparison? BYU finished 10-2. SMU finished 11-2. BYU beat SMU.
Right.
And if you look at their schedules,
But I think if you also looked at, if they played each other 10 times, I'd say SMU would probably have won 8 of them.
really, Joe, you're going to
I do.
state that? Like this is how
BYU?
you're going to determine playoff games? We
No,
actually had
I'm
a
just
game.
saying.
We actually had a game. Hang on just a second. We actually had a game between the two teams. BYU won the football game, but you're saying you think
They lose
that
8 of the
SMU
next
would have
9.
won the other 8.
They'd lose 8 of the next 9. That's what I would say. BYU was not
That's how you want
impressive.
to select playoff games.
No, I'm just saying,
Playoff
like,
games by saying
no, I didn't
think-
say that. I didn't say that.
well, it
I
sounded
just
like
said
it.
if they were to play each other 10 times in the season, then SMU comes out 80% winning percentage.
What are you basing that on?
They're a better team. I didn't.
Based on
BYU,
what?
they won one
SMU
game.
is
They
a
won
better
one
team than BYU last year based on what?
Yeah, but then the team they lost to, it was
Based
a
on
whole
losing
triple.
by
It
4
was a whole
touchdowns to Kansas
triple
State in the
round robin
playoffs?
kind of a thing. What about Kansas? Didn't Kansas beat both? Didn't they beat Colorado and
Sure. Okay.
and BYU? So, why didn't Kansas get in? Like, here's an argument for
Why not? Because they
why
lost
didn't
7 games. No, we're not
no
bringing
no
teams
no
in that lost
they
7
didn't
games.
lose
We're
7.
comparing teams with like records.
Yeah, but look at the teams they beat. So if you're going to say that BYU was this great team, I don't
I
think
didn't
so.
say they were great. I said, okay, let's look at BYU's schedule and let's look at Houston or SMU's schedule. I said Houston because I'm staring at their schedule right here. So, where's BYU?
And then let's see the growth that the teams made and the decline.
Is that how we select playoff teams? Their growth?
No, but I'm just saying, like, here's how teams finished, and they wound up playing some pretty good games, and they beat these teams that got in. Kansas State beat a lot of teams, didn't they? Pull up Kansas's.
Kansas State. Where are we coming with?
No,
Kansas?
no,
We're
no.
comparing
Can't. I said
BYU
Kansas.
and
No,
SMU.
Kansas. Pull up Kansas and see who they played towards the end of the second half of the season.
We're comparing BYU and SMU. Let's stay focused here. All right, there's BYU's schedule last year. They went 10-2.
Southern Illinois, SMU,
this,
Wyoming,
out of the way.
Kansas State's good. Baylor's there. Arizona's
Okay.
there.
Again, they beat SMU head to head. All right, they beat Kansas State by 29 points. They beat Baylor. They were an 8-4 team.
Yeah, but what did Kansas State finish? I mean, were they good? I don't think so.
They finished 9-4.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway,
Well,
if you want to say who beat the teams with the most winning records, BYU beat SMU, Kansas State, Baylor.
what was Oklahoma State's record?
They were horrible.
Yeah, and they lost only by 3, or they won by 3.
We're penalizing teams for only losing
Central
by
Florida.
only winning by
Utah Utes, they won by 1. That's not bad. I'll give them that. Kansas, they lost. There you go.
They beat. They ended up beating 4 teams, but 3
Arizona
during the regular
State, they
season.
lost.
Yeah, the team that won the conference championship by 5 points.
So in bowl games
on the road,
people sit out. It doesn't really matter. So I won't count the Colorado game.
People sit out. Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders played that game. Colorado didn't sit anybody out of that game. They kicked their.
They didn't sit anybody?
No. Nobody significant. I don't know if anybody's, but their 2-star players played. All right. Anyway.
Yeah, but what about the other team? Did the other team sit out?
Well, yeah. Maybe BYU. That would be to their credit if they had players sitting out and they won. All right. So that's the BYU.
Now look at Kansas.
Kansas. What's Kansas have to do with this?
I'm telling you, they're the ones that really climbed up in the second half of the season.
I know, Joe. believe me, I know who everyone beat and lost to. Yes, Kansas beat Colorado and BYU late in the season. I know. They also lost 7 games. They're not in this conversation. This is between SMU and BYU.
I brought them up into the conversation because of the way they got better as the season went along.
They are not in consideration for the playoffs, Joe. They lost 7 games. We're comparing SMU and BYU. All right. SMU, of course, lost to BYU head-to-head. That should be the end of the discussion right there. Who did they beat? Well, they beat TCU. They went 8-4 in the regular season. They beat Louisville. They were an 8-4 team. They beat Duke. So they had 3 okay wins, 3 decent wins, and then that's the end of there. Again, this is pretty weak too.
Well, they finished pretty strong, it looks like to me. They had all wins in the second half.
Yeah, they beat Cal, Virginia, and Boston College in a horrendous Pitt team. So anyway,
I
don't
back
think
on Kansas.
I don't think that there are any huge discrepancies between SMU and BYU. I'm just making the original point I made is that BYU had a gripe. I didn't say that they should have made the playoffs. I just said, why were they automatically discarded and SMU made it? That was basically because SMU made it to the conference championship game. They lost, but they made it to the conference championship game.
Okay. All right, Mark.
All right, Joe. Anything else?
That's it.
I don't know what we accomplished there, but
well,
I get your point about Kansas. They were playing better late in the season, but they lost 7 games. So
my point was the whole thing was about making playoffs either 8 or 16. They made a mistake going from 4 to 12. They should have went progressively up to 8. And then if that doesn't work out, enough people gripe, then you can go to 12. If that doesn't work right, then you go to 16. But they took a jump from 4 to 12, left out 8, and now,
gotcha.
Who knows, they're going to make it very hard and very convoluted just to have the best teams play. And my point is you get the top 8 teams and you get the top 16 teams and figure out, if you go 8, then you go 8. If you go 16 and you go 16, and it's like, that's, 12 that we have now and 16, I think it's almost the same because a week passes for the bye team, I think, in making the season long. That was basically my point of calling.
Okay. So again, whether it's at this point 12, 14, or 16, my issue is I don't want a bunch of people deciding this.
But that's who else are you going to get? Like, I agree with you as far as
to objectively select it.
But even if you got a general manager to do that or a commissioner,
no, that's not objective. No. Leave Pete. Does the NFL have a committee selecting playoff teams?
Well, it's still going to be subjective no matter what.
No, it's not.
How can it not be?
You have an objective system.
How can you do that when you have teams making their own schedules?
You don't have teams making their own schedules. You stop that. That's where then it's
going to be subjective in trying to equal it out. Your formula in trying to equal it out is going to be subjective. Your formula in trying to equal it out
schedule subjective
is going to be subjective.
It's subjective.
Well, there's 32 teams there, right?
Yes. In the power conferences, we're only dealing with twice as many. You can have an objective schedule. Does that mean it's a perfect schedule? No, it's not a perfect because you can't predict this future. So nobody can have a perfect schedule, but it can be objective.
That's you're playing with words now. It's just, your definition of objective.
You need a dictionary, Joe. I'm not playing with words.
Yeah,
I'm clearly stating there's a difference between objective and
subjective.
Equal.
But you're never going to get that because even if you're...
Yes, you can have an objective schedule. It can't be perfect because you can't predict the future. The NFL has an objective schedule. That
Is
doesn't
it
mean it's a
perfect?
perfect schedule because you can't predict the future. So teams are automatically going to have
Well, that's why we
easier.
watch sports, is because you can't predict the future.
If you would let me speak, you can't have a perfect schedule in anything because you can't predict the future, but you can make it at least fair. You can make it objectively fair based on
I disagree with
the
that.
result.
I disagree with that.
Well, you're wrong. That's all
No,
I
I'm
can
not.
say.
You can't make it objectively fair. Who are you kidding? Who are you kidding? You're going to try and sit there and play with 130 teams
Oh
and
my
say,
word.
I'm going to be objective and I'm going to make this schedule fair.
Yes. The NFL does it every year.
The NFL has 32 teams or whatever. We're talking about 160 teams in the viable for playoffs.
Okay. So if I made up Ohio State and Michigan's schedule next season, and I said, Joe, Ohio State is going to play the top 9 teams in the Big Ten, and Michigan is going to play the top 9 teams from last year in the Big Ten. You don't think that's objectively fair?
Well, who's the other 3 teams?
What do you mean? Who's the other 3 teams?
Well, who's the out of conference? Are you eliminating out of conference?
I'm giving an example of a
All right.
conference schedule being objective.
And what about out of conference to finish out the schedule?
That can be made objective too.
How?
You can't predict the future. I'm not saying that it's going to. There's a difference between it being fair and equal and it being objective. Those are 2 different things.
Okay, even if that's there are 2 different things. So what? The fact that you can't make those other out of conference games objective, you can't, because you don't know the future, as you're saying.
Exactly. But it would be incredibly closer to fair than it is now. When Indiana goes out and schedules 3 high school teams and USC goes out and schedules LSU and Notre Dame, we know that those are not equitable schedules. If my system goes out and schedules Indiana to play 3 teams that went 500 the previous season and 3 teams for USC to play that went 500 the previous season, no, I can't guarantee what their schedules and their results are going to be this year, but I sure as hell can tell you they're going to be a lot closer than Indiana playing 3 high school teams and USC playing Notre Dame and LSU. I guarantee it because I've done it 50,000 freaking times to prove it.
Okay, so that's one team.
I've run these scheduling models a zillion times, and they're fair.
So that's one team that you were talking about, Indiana. So now you're going to have to multiply that times the 18.
I've done it.
Times the 7,
Joe.
times the 17
done it.
times the 17 other teams.
This crap up out of thin
times
air.
the
I've done it.
Who says you're objective about what you did? Who said you're objective about what you did? So what you did? It doesn't mean it's objective.
The results proved that I was being objective.
No, they didn't. There's no results.
Yes, they did, because there was a
play to your schedule.
Played
they didn't play to your schedule.
That my system was objective.
They didn't play to your schedule. All you did was look at results. All you did was look at results. I'm saying that's one team.
Joe,
now you got to do that for the other 17 teams in the Big Ten, and then the 18 teams.
I know what you have to do because I've done it. You're just telling me something that I've already known that you have to do because I've done it.
Well, you'd have to.
You know what, Mark? For teams, you know I have built a schedule for every team in college football for a season. I've done it.
Well, you know what? Do me a favor, Mark, and post that. Upload that on a thing so I can take a look at it because I'll beat it to hell.
Oh, I'm sure that you will just crush me in a debate, Joe. I'm positive.
Not in a debate, but I'll take a look at all of your objectiveness and I'll question some.
Of course you question it. I would question it too. There's nothing
Because
wrong with
it's
it.
not
I am
objective.
telling you, it will be infinitely closer to being objective and fair for everyone at the end of the season than what's going on right now. I'm not saying it's perfect.
Okay.
I don't think you're getting what I'm saying.
I got it. I just want to see it. I want to see how you made that so objective.
I've done it about 10 or 12 times.
Well, upload one of them.
Am I doing it for this season? Probably not, because it doesn't pay me. I don't get paid to do it. If somebody wants to pay me a couple $1,000s, I'll do it. I've done it way too many times in the past and proven this over and over and over. Go watch the videos. They're all over the place. I've got nothing to hide, just like my prediction record. It's there.
Give me the name of one. I'll look it up.
College football, I don't know what the names of them are, but they're there. I've got nothing to hide. All right. Thanks for calling, Joe.
All right, Mark. Have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You have a good night.
Turn your clocks ahead.
Okay. Let me try to explain this one more time. And there are definitions to the terms objective, subjective. Those have definitions. Those are not, I'm not playing with words. Okay, one more time. This is the simple point that I'm making. You can look at the college football non-conference schedule for all the teams in college football, and you can easily point out they've got a super easy schedule. They're Indiana. They're playing 3 high school teams. USC is playing LSU and Notre Dame. That's not fair. You can correct that and bring that much closer and say, okay, Indiana's going to play, I'm just throwing teams out there. They're going to play Baylor, Stanford, and Kansas State. And USC is going to play Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, and Virginia. Is that going to turn out to be perfect? No, of course it's not. And I just threw teams out, so I didn't balance it perfectly. But is that going to be much closer than Indiana playing 3 high school teams and USC playing LSU and Notre Dame? Yes. You can't predict the future, but I guarantee it's just like when I bring up Baylor has not played a ranked team in non-conference play since 1997. Okay. They've not played a ranked team out of conference since 1997. And people will respond to that, or a number of comments that I make and say, well, you can't predict the future and you don't know who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. Of course you don't exactly know, but we got a pretty good idea that Ohio State's going to be pretty damn good. And if they're on somebody's schedule, they're probably going to have to play a tough game. And we know that if you put Central Michigan on somebody's schedule, that it's not going to be anywhere close to putting Ohio State on this. So it's not completely arbitrary who's on these schedules and how difficult it's going to be. You can estimate it pretty close. All right. Oh, we've got Michael here. Somebody got Michael the link. We've been going for almost 3 hours now. I just did an impromptu tonight, and here we are. Joe, it's not opinion. Joe, it's not opinion so Joe puts in the chat, it's still opinion. I gave an example that was based on opinion because I don't have the numbers in front of me. No, you can build schedules where everyone plays a 500 composite schedule from the previous season. That's not opinion. That's a guideline that you implement. Oh my goodness. All right. Go to it, Michael.
Hey, Mark, how you doing, sir?
Doing well.
No, the reason why IU keeps doing that is so they don't have to worry about trying to get 6 wins in the conference portion of their schedule. That's why they schedule the cupcakes. They know they got 3 easy wins and they have to just find out 3 more wins.
I understand that.
But now I'm trying to explain to Joe. But anyway, I was just looking through your Twitter feed, and I see there's a former player that I really follow. He's at Purdue. And how did he end up being the top transfer tight end? I'm talking about Mike Sinclair.
Yes. How did he end up being the top transfer tight end?
Yes.
The fine folks at 247 Sports evaluated the tight ends, and they consider him to be the best.
Okay. Now, have they done that with defensive backs yet?
They've done that with every player.
All right. I wonder where they have Tiedemann.
He's rated extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. 247 transfer. These comments are still being made in the chat, and it's just it like, okay, I'll just state it one more way. If you gave me an opportunity to select from 1 to 18 the teams in the Big Ten in their order of finish and their records, I wouldn't just be arbitrarily right or wrong. I would be close to being right. Would I be perfect? Of course not. I would miss, but I would be right like 75 to 80% of the time. So the season's results are not arbitrary. Oh my goodness. All right. 20 top 25. Can you see what I just posted, or do I have to take that to the screen there?
I didn't see it, so.
Okay. Let me find the position here. Why is I can't get it to switch to a position? It's on quarterbacks and it's not switching. Well, let's do that. All right. What do we want? Cornerback or safety?
I believe he was a safety, sir.
I thought so too. Lo and behold, there he is. Look at that. Well, this is of course they popped up an ad right in front of me. Bingo. There you go.
Okay, so he's the number one DB, I guess.
The number one safety.
Our number one safety. Not bad. I'm just wondering and stuff like that. Speaking of my beloved Boilermakers and stuff like that, I know you probably dissected and stuff like that, but part of me thinks they might be the bottom dwellers again this year.
Well, it seems as though for a team that went 1-11, they sure lost a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm. But I wonder how it's going to be with Barry Oldham bringing some of his guys in. Because right now, I don't even know who's going to be the quarterback for him next year. Right now, of course, I haven't really got a chance to follow them during spring practice because they're just starting up and stuff. So, but no.
Well, Barry Odom's a decent coach. I'm not going to claim that he's the greatest coach in the country, but they've upgraded at the coaching position. But it's going to take him some time.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So for that, I'm trying to think. Walters went to Washington. He's your new DC, isn't he?
I don't know where Ryan Walters went.
Let me try to find out. I think he went to.
Well, we'll find out here in a second.
He's in Washington now as their defensive coordinator.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. I got to ask you this and stuff like that. Ohio State's going to be the cream of the crop most likely again next year and stuff, and I'm sure Michigan and stuff like that. But I'm thinking it's going to be make or break for USC next year. Do you see them maybe as a top 3 or top 4 team in the conference? Or do you see them middle of the pack, you think?
I would guess that USC is going to be in the middle of the pack. I think that they're doing a lot of things well in recruiting right now and through the NIL objectives, but they're not that's not going to help them next year.
Mm-hmm. So you pretty much think it'll be just Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State again?
Well, I would expect.
And I forget about Oregon too. Sorry about that.
Yeah, if anybody's going to jump up, my first candidate off the top of my head would be Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska. Yeah, they're the first one.
But you don't know what Rail is going to. Hard to tell them what Rail is going to do, though.
Well, sure it is, but he's going from a freshman season to a sophomore season.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, he's going to improve.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to think who's going to be this quarterback for Wisconsin next year.
Billy Edwards from Maryland.
Okay. So you think they'll improve next year with
Most
Luke
likely.
Fickell?
They also got Danny O'Neal from San Diego State to battle for the job, but it's probably going to be Edwards.
Billy, yeah, and he got pretty decent arm on him.
Yep, and he can run.
Yeah, but no, I was going to say
He's going to be better than Braden Locke.
Yeah. All right, I got to ask you this. So, Luke Fickell, Fleck, and thank God, who's the other one I'm thinking of?
Fickell, Fleck.
Loxley with Maryland.
Yeah.
Who do you think might? I mean, they might have decent seasons next year, but if they're like maybe like right above 500 or below 500, which one of them do you think might be saying sayonara?
Why are you putting PJ Fleck in that mix?
I think Minnesota's going to just. I don't know if they're going to be decent. I don't think they'll be a good team next year.
They just went 8-5. Why would they fire PJ Fleck? He's not going to get fired.
No, not necessarily get fired. I'm just saying leave for better.
Oh, leave?
Yeah.
Yeah, PJ Fleck could leave. But Luke Fickell is not elevating outside of Wisconsin unless he has some kind of like miracle season.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, do you think
I'm not understanding your list of coaches. You went with Loxley and Fickell, who could possibly get fired, and then you threw Fleck in there.
I'm saying coaches who could either be fired, and I can even throw Lincoln Riley in there, be fired, or maybe go to leave after the season is over to go to a different school. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah.
We might be there in 2026. Not there for 2026. Thank God I was just thinking about this off the top of my tongue.
Out of those four, the most likely one for me would be Fickell.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
To get fired.
So I haven't talked to you since your beloved Buckeyes won the national championship. What's your take about Matt Patricia being the defense coordinator for Ohio State and Brian Hartline? Is that a long time coming for Brian, you think?
Well, yeah, he's been there since 2017. So that was a good move. And it was a good move for them to get Virginia Tech's offensive coordinator in as an offensive line coach to help as an OC. So they have an experienced offensive coordinator as head coach. And of course, they've got an offensive coordinator coming in from Virginia Tech to help Hartline. Patricia, I'm not crazy about that hire, but sometimes you got to trust the people in charge.
What made Jim Knowles leave anyway?
Money and possible interference from Ryan Day.
So I would think Ohio State's coffers are a lot bigger than Penn State's, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's why it might have been more of the latter than the former. Yeah, Jim Knowles was already the highest paid coordinator in football, and Penn State just made him even more the highest paid coordinator in football. And again, there are rumors, I don't know that they're substantiated, that Jim Knowles wasn't too happy with the way Ryan Day told him to play defense and got after him after some subpar performances.
Okay. I'm going to ask you this. Northwestern, UCLA, who do you think might have the better, and who do you think the team is that can substantially be maybe, you go, I think your formula is like 3 wins better than the previous season.
Yes.
UCLA, Northwestern, and maybe the Illini, even though Illinois went 9-3 last year?
Yes. Illinois is not going 12-0 this year.
Okay. Do you think they can get double digits?
They could. I would be shocked if Illinois won 10 games in the regular season this year. Northwestern went 4-8 last year, so they have to go to 7-5, which of course David Braun did 2 years ago. UCLA went 5-7. They got to get to 8-4. That's less likely. So out of those teams, Northwestern would be my team, but I believe UCLA is a better football team than Northwestern.
Mm-hmm. And then Maryland, I think they was what 6-6,
4-8.
Or were they? Okay, I thought they had a couple different ones like that. And I think hopefully Purdue will be a more than a 1-win team. I guess it can always go up. The future can be brighter than what it is for Purdue football. But no, how good do you think Washington is going to be next season with Jed Fish there?
I generally like Jed Fish. I think he's a good head coach, and the guy that they've got at quarterback, Damon Williams, is a good dual threat guy that gained a lot of experience last year.
All right, last thing. Oregon's quarterback is going to be who next year?
Dante Moore, most likely. They've got a quarterback battle, but he's probably going to be the guy.
Was he behind? What was his name?
He was a 5-star from UCLA that transferred.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering stuff like that. All right, sir. I appreciate it. So you still doing the 4:00 shows?
I am.
All right. I've just been busy with basketball now, baseball and stuff like that too. All right. I will catch you on Monday.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. Yep.
You too.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, the College Football Show, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Got a lot of people watching us on Twitter, unfortunately, like nobody's watching us here. I just recognize that. Like there is nobody watching us here. That's a bit disheartening because I just see how many total people are watching, which is 150, and just about all those people are on Twitter. So that's that's not a good thing. Anyway, we had a fun time and appreciate that a few people out there, including, I believe, Matt Zemek, but certainly Leanne Herring, promoted the show. There we go. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. See you on Monday. That is nice of you, sir. Who do we got? I bleed orange. Thank you for that.